All right, here we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday show right here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Mr. Deity himself. How are you, man?
I am good. I'm ready to go here. I was trying to think of anything I've done recently in my life that I've done for 3 hours, and I actually can't think of anything. So I'm excited to do this because it's it's an attempt to focus.
You need a better bed if you're not getting at least 3 hours of sleep.
Well, that's about it. But I mean consciously.
Oh yeah. I
got my giant glass of water.
Consciously.
Yes, I've got my giant glass of water. Oh, look at that! I did a thumbs up. Cool. And I'm wearing my Depends just in case. So I'm ready to go.
And I don't even have Depends handy. I'm just rolling. However God made
That is
me.
brave. You are so brave. You're so much braver than amazing. I am.
As a reminder, this is like every show on the line. This is a call-in show. The number is 720-619-2288. Theists will always have priority here on the Sunday show, as well as on most of our other shows as well. If you have some God belief, if you have some supernatural belief and you want to share it, feel free to call in. Be ready to explain briefly what it is that you believe and why you believe it, and perhaps most importantly, why you think other people should believe it. Because if you have like I believe in this God, but it's only because he speaks just to me in my prayer closet, and none of the rest of you have any reason to believe, okay, that's not quite as interesting. There's not as much for us to actually engage with, and you couldn't reasonably expect either of us or any of us to believe based on that. But if you have some other reason, by all means, call in, prepare yourself, and we'll do our best. Now, please remember that there is a delay and any number of audio issues, and it's inevitable that we are going to interrupt and pause and ask questions and try to get clarification. We do want you to get the time to tell us exactly what you believe and why, but that's going to require some questions, because sometimes when you say something and you think that we know exactly what you're talking about, you're just wrong. We have no idea what you're talking about, or it's not clear enough for the audience. And I want to make sure that things are clear, because the whole goal is for people to actually learn something. If there is a God, if there is something supernatural, if there is something that warrants belief that I have rejected, or Mr. Deity has rejected, we'd like to know. We don't want to be wrong. We don't want to be clueless about the way the world works, or how the meta world works, or the meta world, or whatever it is you got going on. We'd like to know. And as we wake up regularly in a world filled with people who believe things that we used to and no longer do, it's strange, because once I found my way out of religious belief, it's not like there wasn't a path back to it. It's just the path back to it goes through evidence and argument in a way that my previous beliefs did not. And so if you think you can satisfy those things, by all means, it's 720-619-2288, or down below in the link in the description there, you can actually call in using your computer in this newfangled modern world of convenience that some Lord has blessed us with. It was a handful of announcements. It was. I'm going to thank you for the rest of the day. I just did a video about it's after Thanksgiving, and people are like, "Why don't you thank God for rescuing you from your heart attacks and the triple bypass surgery that you had in your very speedy recovery?" And I'm, I explained in the video why I didn't think of God, and instead I thanked the doctors and the teachers and the surgeons that did all that, the people who diagnosed it, the entire crew of people. I was, on the day that I was wheeled into surgery, I was laying there on a gurney, and somebody came in and shaved my legs because they were going to harvest a vein from
Right.
my
Right.
my left leg. And so my brother was there, and Arden was there, and I was pretty much at peace. I don't remember feeling nervous or worried. I mean, there's a little bit of it, but by and large, I was just like, okay, they're going to put me under, they're going to fix my heart, and then I'm going to be okay, or I'm going to die and I won't know the difference. So it was like,
Right.
what can I do?
Right. Right.
And it went really smoothly. And I was in the hospital for a couple days over Christmas. And yeah, so I think the surgeons, I think the, um, anesthesiologist, I think the nurses, especially because when I came out, I was intubated, and I desperately wanted some water. And so, I was trying to either sign water to the nurse or ask for it or whatever else. And she was like, no, you can't have any water. And I flipped her off. I don't remember it at all. But Arden was sitting there, and afterwards she's like, you totally flipped the nurse off. And I'm like, oh, she's seen it before.
I'm actually
So,
working on a video right now about how no one should thank God for anything because he owes us. He completely owes us. And the crucifixion is the proof of that. So that'll be fun.
ooh,
I've got that coming out in the next month
see,
or so.
I'm looking forward to that, because I was noticing on the list of Mr. Deity episodes, um, you're doing like almost like an annual special for the
Yeah.
last couple of years, because COVID kind of
Yeah.
wrenched us to pieces. But so
Well, it's
is
more
that where?
that my cast is all gone. They're all over the country now and away. And Amy and I ended our relationship in 2018, so I have no Lucifer anymore. It's awful, terrible,
Well, maybe
horrible. Missing
Lucifer can
Lucifer.
regenerate the way the doctor does.
Maybe that's right. That's right. Yeah, I do one every now and then. I have another one coming up. Jimbo's actually going to be on it. He's going to be on. We're going to be talking about. We're going to kind of do a redo of the very first episode, Mr. Deity and the Evil, where it's before the Big Bang, and we're talking about the evil stuff, and it's a whole nother conversation aside from that one. So that's going to be
Ah,
fun.
that is, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar, you can head out to YouTube and find the Mr. Deity episodes, and there's like 105 of them or so over the years, starting from
Oh, there's got to be more
2006.
than that. Really? That's all?
The
I'm shocked. If
Wikipedia
that was the number,
page
I would.
numbers them up to 105, but there may be there's
Wow.
probably some lost episodes that would be like,
Yeah. Well, season two,
deuterocanonical episodes.
almost no one saw season two because we did it for Sony on their Crackle platform, and they wouldn't let it go on
Mm,
YouTube. So almost no one's seen those.
see,
That was a
just
disaster. Yeah.
reshoot season 2 just the way they tried to piece Shada
Yeah.
together. I'm going to make 25
Yeah.
Doctor Who references, because I've got Arden
Yes.
rewatching New Who. But we are going to be ready
Oh,
for calls here in just a
good.
minute. I have some housekeeping announcements to make today. First of all, in addition to today's show, we were supposed to be followed by the Sometimes show. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So when we're done, which will be no later than 5 o'clock, we've got a hard stop time, um, probably a few minutes before 5. And I don't know, did you have a hard stop time before that even?
No. I'm here.
Okay.
I don't have a
I
life. So
Oh, well, see, my life is entirely Arden and all of our reptiles, and one cat. But
right.
so today at 6 p.m. Central, I'm going to be doing an AMA for all of our patrons. So you can, if you're a patron, you'll get a link. You can become a patron at Patreon, patreon.com/call the line. And let me tell you, there's a number of good reasons to do it. The least important reason is that you would get to come in and talk to me at 6 p.m. This evening. Although, maybe you've had something you've been wanting to ask and you didn't get around to it. But one of the better reasons to do it is we are opening up linemerch.com. Line Merch is where you can go to get merchandise associated with the line. And the first two things up there is a stemless wine glass. You're on the wine with Jimmy and Matt, and a one with an actual lid there as well. Those are the first two items. There will be more, but if you go right now, you can use War on Xmas, WARON XMAS right now for 10% off at checkout. And if you're a patron, you will have a 25% off code. So there's a chance for you to go get yourself a nice little wine glass if you're one of those individuals who loves to sit back and warm up their wine while they're drinking and just watch and listen to the show. And I don't know, it's just wonderful stuff. Anyway, there's more coming. And this is not the only show here on the line. The Sunday show is, well, okay, it's not the best show here, but it's our premiere show. It's where theists in particular get to call in and share stuff. And we've already got people lined up in the queue right now. So I know we're going to get hopefully some really good calls today. But every show on the line all week long is a call-in show of some stripe. So Monday is Skeptalk. And this week it's going to be Forrest and Shannon right there taking your questions about perhaps non-religious based skepticism stuff, where you got questions about evolution, you've got questions about psychology, questions about any sort of pseudoscientific belief or claim. You can call in and talk to Forrest and Shannon on Monday. Tuesday is Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock and Eve Was Framed. Dave, as all of you who are regulars here know, is in late stages with ALS, and he has been dying out loud for a number of years, living his life, dealing with end of life issues. And Tuesday is your opportunity to call in starting at 6 p.m. Central and talk to him and Eve about both what he's going through, but also to be able to share what you're going through and to get advice on any number of issues related to end of life issues and dealing with health issues from the perspective of someone who's not a believer. It's very easy to not only fall into the trap of being taken advantage of when you are ill, and especially terminally ill, and to give in to, I'll try anything. I'll try any pseudoscience and woo. I have another gentleman I know who's suffering, he's dying basically from pancreatic cancer, and is a public figure who's getting lots of advice and information from people, including a lot of pseudoscientific woo. And so between Monday's show, Skeptalk, and Tuesday's Dying Out Loud, you've got opportunities to address both those issues. On Wednesday, there's some dumb fucking show here called The Hang Up, where I come on and talk about whatever's bugging me on Wednesday nights. But this would be a good week to turn in, because Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels will be here joining me. It should be hot buttered awesome. Thursday is the Transatlantic Call-In Show with the OG hosts, Aron and Katy Montgomerie, or Aron Hart and Katy Montgomerie. I don't mean to make them sound like they're a couple, but if you are someone who's been called transphobic, or is worried about being called transphobic, or you don't understand issues, or you got questions and you're struggling and you just wanted to make sense, this Thursday and every Thursday starting at 2 p.m. is your chance to actually call in and talk to two real live, actual in the flesh trans folks who can answer your questions and help you correct misinformation, do a better job of making sure that you're not stumbling over your language, make sure that you don't look foolish like some friends of ours. And then next Sunday on the Sunday show, it's going to be me and Shannon Q. I would be more excited about the fact that I get to do the Sunday show with Shannon Q, but I want to let it build so that Wednesday, when I say that it's going to be me and Shannon next Sunday, I'm extra excited. But today I'm super excited to have Mr. Deity here. Now, you just mentioned one of the videos that you're working on for this. Are you still viewing this, the time for anybody? It's hard to explain for anybody who hasn't seen it. Mr. Deity, I'm sorry to inform you, is God. And it's very important that people recognize this, pay a proper tribute, and maybe help God just a little bit to do better for all of us.
Yes,
for those
absolutely
who haven't seen it, give them a quick rundown of what they're in for and where they can find you.
Yeah, so Mr. Deity is a show I started. We shot the first episode in 2006, and in fact, you were the only other atheist kind of out in the public, I think, that I knew of. I think you're probably the only person I can think of who's been doing this longer than I have.
Yeah.
When did you start doing this?
I started doing atheist experience shows in 2004, 2005.
Wow. That's amazing. So you're almost 20 years now.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I did atheist experience for about 18 years, and then I've been over here for a few. I started doing these before I even left ACA stuff. But yeah, it'll be 20 years.
Wow.
I think it was December of 2004. that I called in
Right.
to the show because the ACA's atheist experience actually predates me by a number of years. Although it wasn't something people could actually go see regularly. I mean, we weren't live on YouTube yet because there wasn't a YouTube.
Right. Right. Yeah, but I remember when I got on. You're the only other person I can remember who was doing stuff around the time that I started doing it. But Mr. Deity is a show where I play God. He's not the God. He's a God. And in the Mr. Deity cosmography, they don't know if there is a God either. They just know that there are gods, and Mr. Deity is one of them. And he created this universe as it's a rogue universe. It didn't have permission because Mr. Deity couldn't get he couldn't pass the psych test. He had anger issues. So he went rogue and created his own crappy universe with a low budget, which is why our universe is the way it is. And he had a long-suffering assistant named Larry, and Jesus, who's the guy who they finally get to be Jesus, is not Mr. Deity's first pick. No one else wants to do this whole crucifixion thing. So they settle for this guy who's not too bright. And then my ex-wife, Amy, played Lucifer, or Lucy as we call her on the show. And it was basically just a satire about God and the universe. If you know Mormonism, it has a slight little Mormonistic kind of leaning because I'm a former Mormon. And that's my term, by the way, trademark. And
yes.
And it works perfectly because the Mormon God is not the God. He's just another God as well. So it kind of fit the whole thing. And it's just fun. It's just fun. For the most part, it's just poking fun at things and kind of concretizing some abstract concepts that you never really think of. Like having a conversation about what evils you're going to allow in the universe if you're a god. That kind of stuff, which when you think about it, it's just nuts.
We've met several times over the years. One of my favorites was in, I think it was 2011 at the Oakland Rapture Ram, where Harold Camping was having his Judgment Day event, May 23rd or May 21st, I think was his date. But I posted a Rapture Ram report. It was interesting because not only you were there, some of my other friends were there, and Greta and I did deep baptisms. But in the middle of your talk, I believe it was in the middle of your talk, we had an earthquake.
Yes.
And it was shortly after I heard you use the term foreman, and I was like, oh, that's really good. And then it was not, I think my memory, of course, could be completely flawed about this, but it was not too long after that the ground shook. First time I'd ever been in an earthquake in my entire life. And I'm in that room, surrounded by atheists. And at the end of it, I just yelled, is that all you got? And everybody laughed, and and you just kept going like that. That's nothing.
I remember that.
God.
And I said, yep, I brought that. It comes with me. Yeah, that was fun. I remember that. That was very funny.
Very good. Very good event. We had a lot of fun out in Oakland.
Yeah, that was
fun. If you're ready, we have calls lined up, including theists. And I figure we should start right at the beginning. Calling from New Delhi is Ram. Pronouns are he, him. And Ram says that he can make any atheist believe in God through logic. So, Ram, you are in luck because we have two atheistic, godless heathens right here who both really appreciate logic. So we're ready for you to convince us.
Okay. So before I start, don't judge my morality. This is just a theoretical, logical debate, okay? This is just a theoretical, logical argument that I'm giving you. But don't judge that I'm evil or do anything like that, okay?
I will not.
Well,
okay.
I'll do my best.
So the argument is very simple. It doesn't require any science. It doesn't require requires very simple logic, okay? And it can convince anyone, okay? I didn't want to use this, but Matt, since you're a very realistic and materialistic philosophy is your core, so I had to use this. okay, in order to discuss, and you don't want to get into your personal stuff because I discussed that last time also. So the
I'm ready.
argument is
What's this logical argument?
that okay, the argument is that you will yourself say that I believe in God, okay, by the end of the argument, and it goes
Which
something
God?
like this. It goes something like this that let's say that a terrorist organization kidnaps you, okay, and it kidnaps some your loved one, okay, and they take you to some secret place, okay, and I want you to think deeply over this. They took you to some secret place and they tell you that you have to believe in God, otherwise we will kill your loved one, okay. That's it. That's the argument.
That's the whole argument?
Yes.
Okay. And so you said that by the end of the argument, I would say I believe in God. Well, the argument's over, and I didn't say I believe in God, so
Okay,
that
what would
already
you do
proved
then?
out. No. That was a joke. I'm sorry that you didn't understand it, but it's fine. Let me ask you this: is it possible for someone to say I believe in God even if they don't believe in God?
Okay, so then the terrorist
That's a question.
group says that, yeah, so
That's a question.
no, I don't accept that. I don't accept that. And
Hang
to
on.
counter that,
Hang on.
okay.
So you're saying it's
Okay.
not possible for someone to say they believe in God even if they don't actually believe in God?
No, it's
Well,
possible to say.
I don't know how. I don't believe in God, but I can definitely say I believe in God. Look, I believe in God. I just said it,
Yeah,
but I don't actually believe it. I can
yeah.
also say I believe the Earth is a triangular shaped
Before you
pink
start on a
anal
tangent here,
fissure, but that
before
I
you
don't believe
start
that
on a
either.
tangent here,
I'm
I would
sorry?
like to say that the terrorist would say to you, he would expect this. He would expect you to, fake it
Ram,
and say, okay, I
Ram,
believe in God. Okay.
Ram,
Yeah. Okay.
Ram, stop.
Go ahead.
I asked you if something was possible and you said no. This has nothing to do
You
with
know
how
what?
a
You know what?
terrorist
It's actually very difficult to
Ram,
talk to you.
okay, I'm going to mute you and make it even more difficult for you to talk to me. Okay? I specifically asked if it was possible for someone to say they believe in God even if they don't, and you said it's not possible. And when I tried to explain that it has to be possible, you came back to me with what the terrorist would say. I don't care what the terrorist would say. If someone's got a gun to my head and says, "Tell me that you believe in God or I'm going to kill you," I'll say I believe in God. They don't even have to point it at my loved ones. But if they point it at my loved ones and say, "Tell me you believe in God or I'll kill your loved ones," I will say I believe in God, but that doesn't mean I believe. Uh, I want to. Oh, you hung up. Ram complete. My apologies. I was just getting ready to get Mr. Deity in here to. I don't know.
Yeah, I was.
Did he convince you?
No, not quite. Anytime you're saying that something because you're under duress, it's just not legit. I mean, I don't know why that's such a difficult concept to understand.
Yeah,
Um, I can say I believe in all kinds of things. The question is, do I really believe them? And if not, then. But that wasn't even an argument. I mean, there's no argument there. It's just a
yeah.
question of what would you do if you had a gun to your head? Yeah, I do whatever the person who has the gun wants. I just do it. I want
And
to
he
save my life.
really Ram really wanted us to think about that. What Ram doesn't realize is that in the almost 20 years that I've been doing call-in shows, I bet I've heard that 100 times. And
Really? Wow.
it's not really ever Ram's the first one to think that it's an actual argument that would convince people
Right.
to believe in God. Everybody else is just like, yeah, but if you had a gun to your head, or they were going to kill your family, you'd say you believe then. Yes, I would. I'd say all kinds of things. I
Yeah.
would say almost anything you want.
I can't think of anything I wouldn't say, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't have anything. I just don't have anything that that I care about that much more than my life, that the words coming out of my mouth would be so offensive to me that I would, I think for some Christians that they wouldn't say I don't believe in God, because that would be a vile, horrendous thing. But I don't have any loyalty to any idea or dogma or anything like that where I couldn't just go, yeah, I don't believe that. Okay, whatever.
That's the truly interesting scenario. Not if you could get someone who doesn't believe in God to claim they do, but could you get someone who does believe in God to claim they didn't? Because now there's a consequence. There's no consequence to me saying I believe in God. Hi, everybody. I believe in God. Hell, I said it for decades before I became a non-believer.
Right.
At the drop of a hat. And if somebody came up to me when I was a Christian and said, hey, if you had a gun to your head, here, let me. If you had a gun to your head, would you deny Jesus Christ? I probably would have said, no, I would not deny Jesus Christ. And whether or not I actually would, you can't possibly know until you're in that situation. And so I'm sure there are plenty of theists who would not deny their beliefs because they think there's a higher consequence.
I would have said the same thing. I would have said, no, I will not. I will defy that. I would have been, well, you don't know, Abinadi, or one of the prophets from the Book of Mormon, who stands up against, mortal threats and enemies, and and then God steps in, of course, because you're his man now, because you're standing up for him. He steps in and protects you. I probably would have thought something like that. But well, he's gonna protect me because I'm his guy. But that's the stupidest argument I think I've ever heard for the existence of God.
It's bizarre. I tell you what, Ram, I know you've called before and you say it's very difficult talking to me. I'm doing my best to make sure that it's less difficult. And let me tell you, today's a really good day. Like I could have taken that call a whole bunch of different ways. I just kind of really just want to understand. And so if I were to give Ram the benefit of the doubt, the most charitable understanding possible, then even Ram knows that that's not an argument for belief, but it's about an argument of people professing belief. And we already know that people will profess belief even if they don't believe. As a matter of fact, the Bible includes passages about not all of you who say to me, Lord, Lord, are truly saved. And perhaps they believe, perhaps they don't. So Ram, if you have an argument for the existence of God, cool, call back in, present that. If you have an argument for, hey, I bet I can make you say that you believe in God, I really don't know what that gets us, because if you send in, like to my Wednesday show, if you send in a $10 super chat that says, I believe in God, I'll read it. I mean, you don't have to put a gun in my head. You can just pay me and I'll say it, because it's, but no. There are people who view this, and I think that kind of addressing it from would Christians deny it, where this profession has such incredible consequences to it that they view the kind of the gravitas of the situation such that, it would need to be, you're getting to the core of what someone really believes. But what they fail to understand is that if at the core, I really don't believe there's any God or any consequence to it, it's a little bit like when you were kids, they would say, you could go into like a mirror, and you turn off the lights and you hold a candle and you'd say Bloody Mary 3 times and something would happen or whatever else. And if you believed the story, you might be terrified to do it. But I will absolutely go into any closet in any supposedly haunted house anywhere in the world with my candle and hold it up and do Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary multiple times, because at my core, I have nothing to be afraid of.
Right. I've taken this one step further.
Cool.
I've taken this one step further in my own personal life. In the spirit of Pascal's wager, I've said the sinner's prayer and accepted Jesus into my life and heart. I don't believe in Jesus, and I'm not sincere about it, but those are just 2 more of my sins, which Jesus will forgive me for if he's actually there. So I recommend all atheists do that, by the way, just as fire insurance. Just get yourself saved and be done with it. And then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Boom.
And by the way, just you don't have time to actually join and participate in every religion. But if somebody could put together a nice list of like, here's the top 400 religions and what
Right.
what magical sentence you need to utter in order to be saved by them, you could just go down the list. You could probably get it done on like a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, we really should all do that. Now that I think about it, we should just, CYA for every religion that we can think of, and then just say a generic. If I don't know about you, God, you're one of the gods that I've never heard of, and stuff. Whatever you want from me, it's yours. I give it to you freely, and then we're all done. We just don't have to worry about it.
Well, we're lucky because we not only have more callers, but we have more theistic callers. Some of them want to demonstrate stuff, but others, like your neighbor here, calling from Canada, just wants to talk about Christians who become atheists without any personal trauma. So, hello, your neighbor. You're on with Mr. Deity and me.
Hello, guys. How are you?
Hi.
I just want to catch your name again. I know someone introduced me to this show. Someone told me to call in. But is that Jimmy and Matt? I want to know who's Jimmy and I want to know who's Matt.
No, I'm Matt, and Jimmy's not here today.
Okay.
Today, joining Matt
Jimmy's
is
not here
Mr.
today.
Deity.
Okay. I'm a first-time caller, and I hope I can have many more beautiful
You're not a
calls
first-time
with
caller.
you guys. Well, technically, I'm not. I screened, I think, 2 weeks ago, but I never made it to the queue. So basically,
okay.
Today's the first time I'm actually speaking. Yeah.
Well, then welcome. It's your first time on air, so we'll count it as first-time caller. So, welcome, your neighbor. What do you got for
And
us?
I hope we have more beautiful conversations. I heard the conversation before myself. I was just laughing. It was really funny. And you're right. I agree. That's not an argument for I believe. You're completely correct. I don't agree with that either.
Okay.
And I also believe. First of all, I was going to ask you guys because I believe most atheists come from Christianity. So I was already happy to get some info on you that you're quoting the Bible basically. Not everyone calls me Lord, Lord. And yes, I agree to. They're hypocrites. You can actually say I believe in God, despite the fact that in your heart you actually do not believe in God. And after that, I also have to comment on what Mr. Didi said right before that about a generic statement just to ensure you're saved. It doesn't work that way, just so you know. Especially with us, it really doesn't work that way because that's the
what
whole
you
point
say.
of
But so
seeing into your heart.
I'm assuming. So your neighbor, I'm assuming you're a Christian of some variety, right?
I'm a Christian. Full stop.
Yeah.
No
and so
variety.
when you say it doesn't work that way, according to your version of Christianity, do you have any way of knowing whether or not somebody is saved, or is God the only one that knows that?
God is the only one who knows it.
So you don't get to tell anybody that that's not the way it works, because God can make it work however God makes it work, and you wouldn't know.
That is ultimately true. But again, no denying, that's ultimately true. But as you're conversant with the Bible, they know that a lot of quotes comes with an asterisk.
Yeah.
It's
first
not
of
an
all,
asterisk that's written there. It's an implied asterisk.
So your neighbor,
you know what I mean?
just in case you missed it.
In other words, go on.
Hang on. When we were joking about let's just say whatever magic words in every religion we need to say in order to be saved, we're not saying that seriously, but we're saying if in fact there were religions that work that way, why not cover your ass? Okay.
Again,
let's get to whatever your question or comment is, so that we're not distracted by previous calls.
Okay, it's fine. Okay, so then to my point. Okay, so again, I personally don't believe you can make an argument for the fact that God exists, because I don't think that's the way it works. I don't think that's the way it works. And because to me, it's just a mere fact. And anyone who is interested in this just has to follow the path to get there. To me, it's not an argument.
I'm having difficulty understanding what you're saying. It's like your phone scratched a little bit, or it was a little quiet.
Sorry. So, is it better now?
So hang on. So you said you don't think you can make an argument for God because it's just a fact?
Yes. And anyone
I
trying
could-
to make an argument of it, to me, you're going to be misled because trying to make an argument of it. That's
I'm
how
just-
that's
I'm
just
just-
the way I see it. I would rather tell
So-
you. Go on.
Okay. How is there a fact that one can reasonably believe for which it is not possible to make an argument? Because it's only arguments and evidence that are going to be convincing on facts.
While I do not disagree with you, I want the question. I think a better question would be this: if there's one thing that breaks that rule, do you think it's going to be God that breaks that rule?
I don't think there's anything that breaks the rule. And I didn't ask you what a better question was. I asked you a question.
I know you didn't ask me what a better question is, but from my conversations with most people, I felt they always ask the wrong question. Is it possible to ask the wrong question?
How do you know you're not asking the wrong question?
Good question. But on this side of the aisle, if I'm claiming there's something and you're claiming there's nothing, who do you
That's
think
not
is
the
most
claim.
likely asking the wrong question?
No, your neighbor. If you're claiming there's something, I'm not claiming there's
Yes.
not something. I'm asking you to demonstrate that your claim is true. Can you do that? And you
Okay.
just said you can't.
Okay, good question. Yes, I cannot do it. There's no point going in circles trying to tell you because
Then
that's why I'm happy that you
why
read
should
the Bible.
your neighbor, why should we have a conversation? The whole purpose of this show is for you to call in, tell us what you believe, why you believe
Okay.
it, and why you think other people should believe it. And you're calling in. Don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. I'm going to ask. Let me finish my fucking thought, and then you can answer.
No problem.
You're calling in to say, not only am I not going to tell you exactly what I believe, I'm going to start by saying you can't make an argument for it. So even if we got to what you actually believe, you're not going to
Okay.
make a case for it. So why are we having a conversation at all?
Hold on. I'm not saying I'm not going to make a case for it. I've not said that. I'm not going to
You
make an
said you
argument
can't.
of it, but I'm not saying I'm not going to make a case for it.
You said you
You understand
can't.
that?
Why don't you just jump? Can we just jump to the making the case for it? Let's
Yeah.
clear the
You
path
want to
and
jump to the making
just
case
move to that.
because
I would like you
where
to
I
tell
come
us what
from-
you believe and why.
Okay, where I come from, and this is more important. That's why I said I want to talk to Christians about this. Because to me, every Christian, every atheist who was a Christian before has read that book, right?
No, they weren't.
And if you read
No,
that
they
book,
weren't. All right, hang on.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm going to mute you. I'm going to put you on mute. Just listen for a second because I really want this. I genuinely want this to go well. I'd love for Mr. Deity to get in here, but we're starting off on a really bad foot. Number one, not all atheists were Christians. Some atheists, I know people who are fourth generation atheists, raised by atheists who were raised by atheists. Also, atheists come from non-Christian religions and backgrounds as well.
Like Mormonism.
If most atheists are former Christians, it's only because most people are Christians, or Christian is the predominant religion on there. But also you said, where I come from, blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty sure that where you come from is completely irrelevant to what God you believe in and why, well, maybe not so much what God you believe in, but why you
Right.
think anybody should believe it. I mean, I don't care if you come from St. Louis, Ottawa, Jamaica, Bangladesh. None of that has any relevance on why you believe in God. So all we need is we're going to do one of two things here. Either you are going to make a case for what you believe and why you think other people should believe it, otherwise known as the argument that you say you can't make, or we're going to skip that entirely and you're going to get to whatever point you wanted to get to about Christians who become atheists without personal trauma. It's entirely up to you. Would you like to focus on Christians becoming atheists without personal trauma, or would you like to make the impossible case for God? That's the question.
Sorry about the generalization. First of all, I tried to make sure that wasn't a generalization. It was supposed to be a probability thing. So sorry about that. And secondly, about the other question, I could go straight to the point, but I just thought the flow of the conversation would take us there naturally. And thirdly, when I meant where I come from, I don't necessarily mean geographical location. I meant from a belief basis.
That's also irrelevant. So are you going to present what you believe and why, or are you going to talk about Christians who become atheists without personal trauma? Your choice. One of those two, pick one, and that's where we'll go.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Christians who become atheists.
Okay, cool. Let's start over. Welcome, your neighbor calling in from Canada. You're on the line on the Sunday show with Matt and Mr. Deity, and you wanted to tell us a little bit about atheists coming out of Christianity without trauma. So welcome.
Thank you, Matt. So where I was going with this is the most important thing in this is the weight part of faith. I understand that some people might not have seen anything for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 120 years. But at the end of the day, this whole thing started with someone who was willing to wait for 120 years to get what they wanted. From all my conversations with everyone I've spoken to so far in my life, it's been a short period. I just became active last 2 years ago. It always seems to me that they leave before the due time. That's how it seems to be. And there's enough in the book to let people know that, yes, doubts are allowed, but we're not saying doubts are not going to be allowed. It's okay for people to doubt. But the most important thing about all this is to hang in there. You hang in there till you get what you're looking for. The most famous example of this is Thomas himself. Thomas, despite the fact that he was selected by Jesus, actually doubted. And it's okay. There's room for a little doubt. But what you don't want to do is to ultimately quit in this. Because there's something common. Go on.
I have no idea what you're saying or how this is relevant to Christians becoming atheists.
Should I clarify?
I guess. I mean, Brian, do you know what he's talking about?
If you're looking for something, right? Hold on. Okay, go on. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, so should I have stayed Mormon after I found out Mormonism was not true?
I'm not talking about Mormonism.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. That was you were it's very distorted.
I'm not talking about Mormonism. I'm not talking about Mormon.
But you're suggesting that faith is a matter of just sticking in there and just pushing through whatever. I mean, if you find out that you become unconvinced, what is a person supposed to do when they go? Excuse me, hold on. What is a person supposed to do when they get up in the morning and they look themselves in the mirror and they say, "You know what? I really don't believe this stuff. I just don't believe it." Am I just supposed to keep saying I do?
You don't even have to keep saying. You don't even have to keep saying that. But hang in there. You stay with the word that comes to you.
But I don't believe the word anymore.
But you don't believe it. If I'm not wrong, you don't believe it because you have not seen proof, right?
I'm not what?
Is it? You don't believe it because you have not seen proof, right? You haven't seen proof, right? That's the ultimate reason why you don't believe it, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, that's a component of it, but I don't believe it because I've looked at the arguments and the evidence, and at the end of the day, I say, this isn't the compelling thing that I thought it was, and I feel like I've been duped, and I'm just not going to continue on in this thing because it just makes no sense to me. In the case of God, it's incomprehensible to me. So when I really try to understand the concept as it's explained, it's just not comprehensible to me. So I just can't believe it.
If you look at what you're saying, if your neighbor, if you look at what you're saying, let's imagine there's 10 people and they're all part of 10 different religions. Each one of them, the ones in my right hand were all raised in a particular religion. The ones in my left hand all converted to some religion. But there's 10 people and they're in 10 different religions. And all 10 of them reach a point where they say, wow, I'm no longer convinced that this religion is true. You're saying all 10 of them should stay in whatever religion they're in, even though they're not convinced.
Point of correction. I didn't talk about all 10 religions. I'm talking about one here.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to try
Have
not
I
to
made a
lose my
mistake by
shit.
talking about
I'm
one?
trying not to lose my shit. Just listen to me. Why does your claim that someone should stay in their religion only apply to one religion?
Because, again, Matt, I'm not trying to get you infuriated and all, but that was
Stop.
strictly my
Okay,
fault.
I'm gonna
That's what I wrote
mute
down that I was
you.
gonna talk
I'm
about.
gonna mute you, and you're gonna listen, and then we're gonna move forward because I don't apologize. Don't tell me what you're trying to do. Don't tell me what you're not trying to do. Don't try to soften it. Don't try to spin it around. Nothing. I ask a question, fucking answer it. It's really easy. You are saying that if you're a Christian and you don't believe, you should stay in Christianity. But if you're a Mormon, maybe you shouldn't. If you're a Jew, maybe you shouldn't. If you're a Muslim, maybe you shouldn't. You're saying it only applies to this one. And so I tried to give an example where 10 different people in 10 different religions all come to the conclusion that they don't have good reason to believe. The point was to put them all on equal footing, to test your methodology. And then you said, I didn't say they should all stay in their religion, only this one. So now my question is very simple. Which religion should someone stay in, even if they don't believe? And what is your justification for it only applying to that religion? That's the question. Go.
Okay. I'm asking them to stay in Christianity because I'm ultimately sure that they will see what they're looking for if they wait there.
Okay. So everybody should stay in Christianity because you're sure. But what if a Mormon tells someone that they should stay in Mormonism because they're sure, or a Hindu tells someone they should stay in Hinduism because they're sure, or a Muslim tells someone they should stay in Islam because they're sure? Doesn't the Bible say, let God be true and every man a liar? Why should I care whether or not you think it's going to work?
It's not about, the way I say it, it's not about you caring, right? It's just about if you persist based on the words you've read. That's why I was trying to talk about Christianity alone, not on every other thing.
You're not listening. You said you should say, oh, you hear me, but you're not listening.
I'm listening to you.
You said that people should stay in Christianity because you are convinced that it will bear fruit.
Can I correct that and tell you that not because of me, but because there are people in the book that this happened to? Is that better? Does that work?
No. Because we don't believe the book.
Yes, and there's no problem with not believing the book. There really isn't. Because, like I said, and like the book says, doubts are allowed. It's not like God created everyone and didn't know there will be certain people that needed certain things. But we all met the book, right? This book was written before I was born myself. And if we all met the book and we all read this book, then we're going to see people. We are supposed to see people. We're supposed to see ourselves in the book. And the one thing that I see about every other person out there that hasn't seen something is that everyone who hasn't seen something is a Thomas. Ultimately, the idea was that Thomas didn't quit and Thomas didn't leave. He waited till God came to him personally. I guess you don't believe the book. I understand that. But at least you have to try if you're willing, if you want to see this proof. That's the point. That's what I'm going.
But Thomas was doubting, just like I'm still doing now. And Jesus showed up to him. Hold on.
Exactly.
He doubted.
I'm going to recommend you don't interrupt my guest if you want to stay here.
He was doubting, just like I'm doing. And Jesus showed up to him and said, hey, let's play just the tip with this little cut in my side. And they did it. And then he was convinced. I'm doubting. I'm in the same spot Thomas is. Jesus can show up to me anytime. We'll play just the tip. And I'm in. I'm all in. Let it happen.
I agree. I agree. And do you ultimately understand what the difference is now between you and Thomas? Because that's the most important one. There's a slight difference.
Yeah, I'm Brian and he's Thomas.
The difference between Brian and Thomas is that Thomas was presented evidence and Brian has not been presented evidence.
Well, good. I'm not disputing. But why do you think Thomas is presented in an evidence? It's the most important thing.
Well, I don't think
because
he
was alive at the time
myth.
and asked for it.
No, because Thomas still hung in there. He didn't quit.
Oh, you're so full of shit. Okay, I've hit my limit.
How?
First of all, open up your.
How?
Shut up and listen.
All the disciples bailed on him. All the disciples bailed on Jesus.
Open your Bible. Open your Bible to Romans 14:23 and read it.
Hold on. Because I'm not the type of person to take you to me.
Okay, I just have muted you. I'm going to let you open your Bible to Romans 14:23, and while you're doing that, I'm going to school you on some stuff. Because first of all, doubt is antithetical to Christianity, and doubt is discouraged. The Thomas didn't hang in there. This was day fucking one of Jesus walking in and saying, "Hey, I was dead and now I'm alive." And Thomas is like, "I don't believe it." And Jesus is like, "Go ahead, stick your finger in there." That's not sticking with it. This is instantaneous. This is within short term of an actual crucifixion. And meanwhile, you have zero evidence that anything in that story or any person in that story actually existed and did the things that story claims. Go ahead, Brian.
And think about this. Consider this as well. Thomas had far more to go on than I do. Thomas had lived for 3 years with Jesus. He now has 10 other people telling him that they saw him alive after his death, and he still doesn't believe. Not only that, but you're wrong. All of the disciples bailed on Jesus. They didn't hang in there. Read your Bible. Peter denied him thrice before the cock crowed. So I don't know what your idea of hanging in there is, but I'm certainly I've never denied a dear friend that I loved.
Okay. So let's try this. I'm going to unmute you, and I'd like for you to read Romans 14:23. You can read it.
I'm just going to tell you now that I'm not going to read it.
You're a fucking coward and a liar. You're a coward and a fucking liar.
Hold on.
No. I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to read Romans 14:23. The passage in Romans, by the way, Romans 14 is all about whether or not you would cause another believer to potentially stumble. But Romans 14:23 says, "And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin." If you doubt, it is sinful. Anything that doesn't come from faith is sin. It's a shame for you to come in and, first of all, pretend that the Bible doesn't have anything at all against doubt when it absolutely does. Faith and doubt faith is the excuse people give for hiding their doubts. Faith is when people say, you know what, I've got these doubts and I can't possibly present an argument for them, which is exactly how you started. So you're just going to say with faith. Now, we've gone down this path where you wanted to talk about Christians leaving Christianity and becoming atheists without personal trauma, something that you've not spoken about for even 1 second in the course of this. And instead, you talked about something else. I gave you a Bible verse that proves your claim wrong, and you won't read it. I'm going to take you off mute, and I would like for you to explain to me why we should continue to have any sort of conversation with you if you are not going to be honest about what the Bible says, if you are not going to be honest about what logical argumentation says, and if you are not going to actually defend the topic that you said you came in here to defend. Why should I continue wasting my audience's time on you?
Matt, can you listen? I want to ask you a question. Can you listen? Or is it?
Nope, goodbye. I gave you every opportunity. I hand walked you to your salvation. Your only salvation after dodging everything was to answer my question. And I brought you right up to the edge. And your response when I took you off mute was, Matt, can you listen? You, sir, are not honest. You're not honest with yourself. You're not honest with us. You have danced around with your own version of Christianity where you recognize the truth, which is that you don't have a valid and sound argument to present. You don't have evidence that would present this. You think it is impossible to actually make an evidence-based case for what you believe. And rather than doing what any sensible, reasonable, intelligent person with integrity would do, which is to give up that belief, you are acting as if somebody's got a gun to your family's head, and you're going to lie about it and profess it over and over and over again. And that's not what this show's about. This show is about you telling us what you believe, why you believe it, and why other people should believe it. And the only thing that you gave us was people should stay in Christianity in particular because you're convinced that it would bear fruit, which is true of Muslims and Hindus and everybody else. But when I tried to make that very simple argument and serve it to you on a platter, you turned up your nose at it and decided that you were going to deflect to something else. And there's no problem with doubt. There's no problem with doubt. There's no problem with doubt. Yes, there is. Jesus even calls Thomas out for doubting. Why are you doubting? And then I gave you the verse that is antithetical to doubt. Not necessarily all doubt. This is about doubt versus faith before 5 other Christian theologians call in. By the way, if you're a Christian apologist and you're thinking about calling in or contacting or addressing some conversation we've had here, and you want to come at me or Brian or anybody else for not having as robust an understanding of your version of your religion as you do, and you focus on that instead of how the person who called in was monumentally wrong and dishonest, you're not going to get an answer from me. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm not claiming to know everything about it, any of this stuff. But if you want to call in and act like, oh, the Bible supports my version of Christianity, well, A, give me a reason why we should give a shit what the Bible says. Because, hey, the Quran supports what somebody else believes, and the Bhagavad Gita supports what somebody else believes. And the words of Jimmy on 5th Street late at night support what somebody else believes. As he stands out there with his sandwich board talking about the end is nigh, please, prostitutes, come to me, and as they came to Jesus so that I can, spend time with you before the end of the world. It's wild.
I just want to point out the masterful callback to the first call with the gun to the head. That was beautiful. I hope people appreciate that.
I'm in a particularly good mood today.
You've been doing this for a while, I can tell. Yeah, that was beautiful.
I have some fun. Thank you. We got another theistic call, and theistic calls are always going to take priority here. Vincent, is it Algoma? I don't know.
That's right.
Wow. Hey, Vincent, welcome to the show. You wanted to explain to us who Jesus, Gabriel, and Adam were. So you're on with Mr. D.
Adam was not the first man. Adam was the first white man. And you learn this in a document which was found in 1963 called the Talmud of Emmanuel. You can find it on YouTube. You spell it with an E. That's the best presentation. Gabriel wasn't an angel with wings. He was what's known as a celestial son who come from the seven sisters.
So you're saying he's not an angel with wings? He's a celestial son?
That's right. Yeah, he comes from the seven sisters.
Okay. And
Jesus? They've been coming here for the last 13,500 years to right the wrongs of their ancestors. There was another worldwide civilization here before the Younger Dryas. It was Atlantis and Mu. Atlantis was settled by a man named Lant. What's left of Atlantis is the Azores and the Canary Island chain. And they built cities on North America, South America, all over the world. You can see remnants of these amazing structures all over the planet, all back.
Vincent.
But there was an ancient war that broke out around 15,000 years ago.
Vincent.
And the Younger Dryas is a man-made event.
Hey, Vincent, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
How do we know any of this is true?
Well, just go to the Talmud of Emmanuel.
No, sir. I'm asking how we.
The Talmud of Emmanuel was discovered by Issa Rashid and Billy Meyer.
Vincent.
Yes, sir.
I don't need you to tell me what the source of the story is. My question was, how do we know it's true? There are plenty of stories and plenty of books that are not true. So you're telling a story from a book,
that's right.
And I'm asking, stop. I'm asking you, how can we know it's true?
Well, Issa Rashid, the man who discovered the document, who was given the task of translating it from Aramaic into a modern language, the Israeli government found out he had this document, and word slowly got out that he had this original writings. And
Vincent?
In the middle of the night...
Okay, I'm going to mute you now, Vincent. So, Vincent, you're now muted. I don't know if there's a problem with the audio. There's some bad sound from you. I asked you how we can know it's true. Telling me about the Talmud of Emmanuel is irrelevant. Telling me about Issa Rashid is irrelevant, because I'm just going to pretend like you're here. Is it possible that Issa Rashid translated the Talmud of Emmanuel and it's still not true? And the answer to that question is yes, that's possible. And so my one and only question to you, and if you can't answer this, we're going to have to move on, is what evidence, what verifiable, objective evidence can you present that will confirm the truth of the story that you're citing from the Talmud of Emmanuel? That's all I want to know to start with.
Well, I guess I really can't, but all I can tell you is that Issa Rashid's entire family...
Thanks. Nope. I don't need you to tell me any more about anything ever in the history of the world, because the purpose of this show is for you to tell us what you believe and why. And why other people should believe it.
Wow. Wow. Just wow. I don't know what to say to something like that. Oh my gosh. I imagine that's how people responded to Joseph Smith, when he's telling people that he's, talked to an angel and found a book in a mountain and on a hill, excuse me. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And people will be like, "Oh, Matt's not open-minded," And granted, there's other people that are just going to mock Vincent, and I don't think we never did find out who Jesus was, but I'm assuming he's one of, along with Adam and Gabriel, that we can find out in the Talmud of Emmanuel. But if people are like, "Oh, that's just crazy talk, so let's just dismiss it," well, no. Here's the problem. Everybody out there, every one of you Christians that's out there, for example, I don't know why you're not picking up the phone to call in and defend this. How do you know that your Bible is more accurate than the Talmud of Emmanuel? How do you know that your Trinitarian 3-in-1, 1-in-3, which is absolutely nonsensical view of a God, is more realistic than a Greek or Roman canon or any of these other things? For the people who are like, "Oh, Matt's just not opening this." No. Here, this is my boxed set of the Voynich manuscript. This thing's never been deciphered. It's an amazing book. I spent money on this, even though it's, in the public domain. This is a numbered, limited copy. Am I going to spend time reading it and trying to solve it? I'm probably not going to spend any time trying to solve it. I'm going to wait for, Google's Gemini to get in and decipher the Voynich manuscript. But it has lots of cool drawings and everything else. And yet there's absolutely no story, because there's nothing here we can read. And then you get to things like the Urantia documents or the various books that people put together talking about Atlantis or Shambhala or Shangri-La or El Dorado. I've been playing a mini golf game where they did all these lost cities type things, so they've been on my mind.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Uncharted series.
The video game. I played
series,
those too.
Uncharted, yeah.
It's one of my favorite PlayStation games.
I love it. Love it.
It's weird that I'm willing to believe any of those things if somebody just shows up with evidence for it.
Right.
There's nothing that my mind is closed to if you can present evidence to support an argument. If you want to say something, even things that I've dismissed, like we know vaccines don't cause autism, and we know that the process that led the world to potentially buy into that was the result of an individual and several others lying on a study. And then we're really good about lying with statistics and misrepresenting things. I watched videos this morning because I was getting ads for the barefoot shoes, the ones where you have like almost no sole and your toes are separated, and it's supposed to, take our modern, overly sensitive, privileged feet and rework them so that they can be, it's entirely a naturalistic fallacy that we need to get back to this and everything else. But I was finding videos saying the science says these are bad for you. And then they would list off all the reasons they're bad for you. The lack of cushioning and the fact that we're walking on pavement most of the time and all of this stuff. Right. Whereas our ancestors walked on dirt and grass and other things. And then I would find another video that just debunked that and said, no, here's what the science actually says. Now, I'm not a scientist. And I have friends that are scientists, and I don't know that they could do any better. It's a very difficult world we live in where you have access to more and better information than ever, but you also have access to more and better lies and misinformation than ever. It's very difficult to figure out what's believable. And so I'm not faulting callers as much as I perhaps would have once upon a time. But if you can't get to a point and you can't defend your position, I don't know why we should talk.
And he started off so poorly with that claim about Adam being the first white man, because there's absolutely no evidence that Adam ever oppressed an indigenous people. So that just right there, I'm not buying it.
I don't know. Adam thought he had ownership and dominion over all the other animals.
Oh, that's true. That's true. There we go. Well, okay. Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
All right. So if you're out there and you have a genuine belief, I don't care if it's about the Talmud of Emmanuel or Jesus as Emmanuel or whatever it is. All you got to do, sit down for a minute, jot down, here's what I believe. Define what it is that you believe. And then jot down why you believe it. And if you think other people should believe it, that reason could be different. Because if you ask someone like William Lane Craig, he's acknowledged that he believes because of the inner witness of the Holy Spirit, but he presents arguments that he thinks should be compelling and convincing to people. That's completely fine. I'm not going to say that Bill's a hypocrite for doing that. I wouldn't say anybody is. Just like I can believe that my partner is not sleeping around for reasons that aren't available to any of you. It's funny because actually I don't believe that, but it's a different story. I picked a really bad example for people in a polyamorous relationship, but it's one of those things where I can have good reason to believe any number of things that you might not have good reason for because you weren't there and didn't experience it. If I was in a car accident last night and I tell you what happened, you can decide whether or not you're going to accept my word and have confidence in my take on it, or whether or not I give you a reason to think it's delusional or anything else, but your evidentiary warrant for believing my story is never going to match up to what mine is as the person who lived it. And we have to also do that with the recognition that even living it, I could still be wrong.
Right. Right. I like to say I will believe anything. I believe anything I don't have to believe. In other words, if you demonstrate it with evidence, I'll say, okay, yeah, that sounds right. But even then, I'm like you said, I could be wrong. I could still be wrong. You could give me a really good demonstration. I could be fooled by the demonstration and just be wrong. I'm always open to being wrong. I don't understand this whole idea of needing to believe something and then just clinging to it like it's, I guess that's a religious mindset that I no longer have. I've just abandoned it. It's just I believe everything tentatively, and I'm open to evidence to the contrary, and bring it.
And I wonder.
And I'm with you.
It makes me wonder. And we've got a couple calls we'll get to, although we don't have theists on the line. So if you're a theist out there and you don't like how you were represented by the last few theists, call in and let us know you have a better way to do this. I wonder, there's a temptation to think that there's two different types of mindsets, two different types of thinkers. The ones who are top down. If it came from an authority, it has extra measure and is about how they feel and personal experience, that you would say, let's take this bucket of characteristics of a person, and that's the kind of person that is going to be religious. They're going to accept the preacher, the priest, the imam as having more authority than just the average person. They're going to take the books and think the books should be considered more relevant. They're going to say that so many people believed this for so long that adds something to it. And even when you point out that is an ad populum fallacy, it doesn't matter, because they don't seem to have an understanding of the importance or significance of fallacies even after identified. The temptation is to say there's those kinds of people, and then there are the people who are more logical, more rational, who understand fallacies and all those other stuff. And I'm not sure that's true, because I was a believer and now I'm not. And while I didn't understand everything about logical fallacies at the time that I began to believe, I did understand it while I was still a believer. I valued it everywhere. I say I was a skeptic on every subject except my own Christianity, because there was a kind of like protective walls built around that. So I'm not even sure it's fair to say that those are the two type of people. I really, and I don't mean this to be insulting. I know I called somebody a coward earlier. I should probably avoid the name calling, but I think that's fair if I give you the Bible version. Like, I'm not going to read that. Okay. It's not even my fucking book, and I know it better than you do. But it may be that whether or not people are comfortable being honest with risk.
Right. And do you really want to know the truth? That was a big factor for me. One of the reasons I say I became an atheist is because I believed Jesus. I believed that the truth will set me free, and I was prepared to follow it wherever it led. And when, for me, once you've been fooled, right, and you've been fooled, like, Mormonism is one of those religions which is demonstrably false, because it's entirely dependent on a whole set of empirical claims about the Native Americans and who they were and where they came from and blah, 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 blah. And now the science has been done, and there's not a doubt in my mind that this was just made up BS. And once you've been fooled like that, you can look back and see how you were fooled. And you can look back and know yourself a little better about how susceptible you are to appeals to emotion or appeals to authority or all that kind of stuff. And you start to learn, okay, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. And here's what I'm gonna need from now on to believe a claim, X, Y, and Z. And if you don't have those things, I'm sorry, I'll leave it open. I dismiss it without prejudice. You can come back later and add more evidence if you've got it. But if you don't, it's just not interesting to me. I don't care, and I'm not believing it.
There's a line. I'll expand it just a little bit. There's a line that I use in the magic show when I'm touring doing the magic and skepticism thing, where I talk about why I'm not. For anybody who showed up tonight, let me see if I can slip back into. So imagine we're about 5 minutes into the magic show, and it's welcome everybody. For anybody who showed up here tonight thinking that I'm going to teach you how to do the magic tricks that I do, that's not going to happen. And I want to make sure that you understand why. And there's 3 different reasons. The first is there are people out here in the audience who don't want to know how it's done, and I don't want to ruin the show for them. The second reason is that there are other magicians who are doing some similar things or some identical things to what I'm doing, and I don't want to ruin their shows by sending in audiences out there. And then there's another reason that I don't do it, and that's because once I show you how I've done it, now we have the risk of you thinking you know how it's done. And the truth is, there are many different ways to do these things. And the second you think you know enough that you can't be fooled, it's easier to fool you in a different way. And for my wrestling fans and wrestling friends, there's something called smarts, marks, and then there's half smarts. And those are the people who know just enough, but you're still going to dupe them. And so if I show you the faith healing trick of, hey, one of your legs is longer than the other, and I show you how it works, and you go off and you watch somebody else do this and they don't slip the shoe, well, now you might think you've seen something that's real, but there's 5 different ways to do the leg lengthening thing where you tilt them at off angles so that they look at different sides. And you don't have to do it by much. You can slip the end of a shoe off. You can actually pull on it. I remember being a kid and having my great uncle stand there at Christmas time with his arms out and then pull that arm out and show how they're no longer lined up, even right down to the sleeves being riding up. There's all kinds of ways to do this. And so that's why when I'm doing the magic show, I don't teach people how they're done, with one exception. I'll teach you how this is done, just so you know that you know how something's done, and then I'll fool you a completely different way with what looks like exactly the same trick. But
that's great. That's great.
Fun.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I'm ready to go back out and do another show.
There we go.
All right. We got
know Jamie, by the way, Jamie Ian Swiss. Are you friends with Jamie?
Yeah, we know each other.
He's a friend of mine. Yeah, he's amazing. Are you ever out here at the Magic Castle?
I haven't performed at the castle yet, but it's on my list. I have been to Jamie and I went to the castle. As a matter of fact, there's a documentary called Magicians that got pulled because one of the 3 guys they were following turned out to be a pederast.
Oh, geez.
But if you watch that documentary, in the opening, in the beginning credits, you will see me standing there in a silver suit with a pink tie that's and I've got a margarita right at the castle. So yeah.
Nice. By the way, that's a funny story about the pederast. And it's an awful story, but a funny one. I have one even better that a lot of people don't know. You know that I used to work with Dennis Prager, right? Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah. So Dennis was making a video with the Zucker brothers from Airplane fame, and the people who were helping write that were Matt and Trey from South Park, and they did this whole video series called For Goodness Sake, about morality. And one of the big stars, they didn't learn this until just after, O.J. Simpson.
Oh.
So no one. If you have a copy of that series, that has to be amazing. I had one, and I don't know where it is. I suspect my ex-wife has it in storage somewhere.
Oh, that's
but oh my God, that would be so fantastic to have. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Funny stuff.
Jamie and I are both into snakes. We've talked several times. We've both done Dragon Con. There was him and myself and Kurt, another magician friend of ours, that did magic down there. I don't want to put myself. Jamie knows more about magic than I ever will, by a lot.
Jamie's
and he was one
Jamie's mentalist show is Jamie's Mentalist show will blow your mind. It will freak you out and scare you and think he can read minds. It's amazing. He's the best. And his close-up magic, I've never seen anything better. He's just so impressive.
All right. So before we get all sidetracked on who we know and how good they are at doing stuff that blows people's minds, which is great because I love doing that stuff. We've got callers. Kramnik in, is it Michigan?
Yeah. Hello?
You're not Vladimir Kramnik, are you? You're not the 14th world champion of chess, are you?
Oh no, I put the name on because I like Kramnik, but yeah. Wait,
have you seen what he's been saying lately?
About the chess cheating?
Yeah. Do you think he's right, or do you think he's off his
totally
rocker
wrong
at this point?
Wrong.
Okay. I was just curious. And for anybody out there who's watching that doesn't know, Vladimir Kramnik is threatening to sue chess.com for saying that he accused Hikaru of cheating when he says he didn't accuse Hikaru of cheating, when he absolutely intimated very strongly that Hikaru was cheating. But welcome. Kramnik is a theist who wants to discuss reasonable belief and at what point to believe. So you're on with Mr. Deity and me, which sounds like a show. Like
Mr. Deity and me. There we go.
Like I'm the one that should be in diapers, and Mr. Deity's taking care of me. But anyway, Kramnik, welcome.
Yeah, and before we start the conversation, by the way, was it Matt Dillahunty? Are you the one that was just talking about chess? I can't see you.
Yes.
Oh, so okay. Well, what rating are you at chess?
It depends on time controls, but I'm back under 1,000 bullet, and I don't pretty much play anything but bullet. So I think my highest bullet was like 11 or 1,200, and highest classical approximation was maybe 1,600. I don't spend any time studying. I just play bullet for fun, especially when I'm on the toilet. And the problem,
awesome. Okay, cool.
The problem is that I play a lot of bullet when I'm high, and so my bullet rating goes right in the toilet when I do that.
Yeah, I assume so. Okay. So back on topic. I'm younger. I think you can tell from my voice probably. And I would say I am a Christian. I'm a theist, but I would say that I try to be as logical as possible. So I'm open to accepting that maybe this isn't true if I can't logically believe in it. And watching your debates, I see you're a very logical person. Like the things you say, like it always follows through. So I really appreciate being able to talk to you for a couple of minutes. So I would say that
sure.
I would ask, what do you think about the argument of that? It's kind of like the cosmological argument. Everything that comes into existence like needs a cause, and so it would have to, the thing that puts us in as a cause would have to be outside of time, basically. So what do you think about that argument?
So you're presenting a version of the Kalam cosmological argument, which is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause for its existence. And then from there, they go on to say that cause must be external to the universe and not bound by time and powerful enough to do all this. So first of all, I think one of the questions that somebody could ask is, why does the first premise say everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence? Why on earth are we only talking about things that begin to exist? Do we know of anything that didn't begin to exist? And if we can assume even that premise one is okay, premise two being that the universe began to exist seems to me to be a bit of an equivocation, because what we're talking about when we say the universe is our local presentation of the universe, the local space-time, which we can only trace back to just slightly after what would be identified as the Big Bang cosmology. So from the Planck time back, we can't even speculate about the universe. And to talk about before the universe, since the model includes the origin of time, is also nonsensical. How do we decide that the universe that we live in couldn't have always existed in some form or another, And that what we're really trying to find is the cause of the change from a static singularity or a production of it in a multiverse environment, etc. I don't know how to say, I don't know how to conclude that because there's a universe now with space and time, and presumably there was a point where that space and time either didn't exist or was different. Therefore, something caused that change. I don't know how to identify what it is. I don't know how to identify if it is. But what theists are doing is saying there must be something, and it must be this, and this. And those things sound a lot like the God that I believe in. Therefore, belief in that God is warranted. I don't know how anybody could conclude that it's even a thinking agent. Like when there's a rock at the bottom of a mountain, we don't presume somebody rolled it down there.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. So with the rock thing, I don't think that just because it's at the bottom of a mountain, it would have to be rolled down there necessarily. But at some point, something would have to cause for it to be there, like the Big Bang at some point is some kind of a cause to that point, right? So why wouldn't we logically say the universe would necessarily need that, just as everything else in the universe? Why would you say?
Why would I say the universe needs what?
Why would you say that the universe wouldn't need a cause, just like everything else within the universe?
Because I don't know that the universe actually had the beginning that people are asserting. It's the same reason they're basically saying everything that begins to exist so they can exclude God, because they want something that's uncaused to be the ground, and they're saying it's God. And I'm saying, okay, maybe it's God, maybe it's a multiverse, maybe it's a universe that always existed or that oscillates or that takes different form, or multiple universes interacting. I don't have any way to investigate it, but I have no good reason to conclude that there is a thinking agent that transcends space and time and can create the universe and cares who I sleep with and talks to some people in some way, somewhere, but doesn't provide any evidence to believe in it in any way that's testable or identifiable by good standards. It's like the people, and I don't mean this to be insulting, it's just what pops into my head. It's like the people who claim they were abducted by aliens. Maybe they were, but it always seems to be somebody out in the middle of nowhere. It's not like anybody gets abducted off Fifth Avenue in New York in broad daylight from a ship that we can see. It's always, hidden, or they're probing the cows. If it's true, you have to present evidence for it. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to believe in this God thing. And actually, you started this way. You started by saying you're open to accepting that maybe the God you believe in isn't true. But while that's laudable, you're still doing it backwards. You shouldn't believe and then be open to the possibility that it's not true, waiting for someone to convince you that it's not true, because that puts the burden of proof on disproof. What you should do is not believe, and you should be waiting for someone to prove it is true. And that way, when they present evidence that it is true, now you have a warranted belief. So if there's a God, I'm open to that, but I don't think that we can say, hey, I don't know why there's a universe. I don't know how there's a universe instead of nothing. And therefore, I'm going to go with God until somebody gives me better. That's like saying we found a dead body and I don't have any way to figure out who did it. So I'm just going to say the butler did it until you prove that somebody else did. Meanwhile, you haven't even demonstrated that the butler is possible.
Okay. Yeah, I really do agree with that line of thinking. And to respond, that I do have it backwards, kind of. I grew up a Christian. I do consider myself one. That's why I have the presumption that God does exist, because that's what I've been raised with. And I am leaning towards.
That's why you started with that.
What's that?
That's why you have that default position at the beginning of the call, but it doesn't explain how you can maintain that default. once you understand that the way the burden of proof is supposed to work, for example, if you walked into court thinking you had to prove your innocence and you were really concerned because you didn't know how anybody could prove that, and when you got in there, somebody said, hey, you've misunderstood the burden of proof. You don't have to prove your innocence. They have to prove that you're guilty. All of a sudden, you're never going to get that burden of proof wrong again. And you're not going to stay in court going, well, I was raised to believe that I need to prove my innocence. I mean, I don't know how you can hang on to that.
Yeah, I
once
get
you
you.
know.
It's not just that I was raised like that, by the way. I was convinced by other arguments. Like, for example, the one I gave you, I've heard that before, and that's what convinced me. And now you're giving me more to consider as to why, if that's true or not. So
I get
yeah.
it. I get it. I'm only saying this not because I'm actually surprised that you didn't instantly change your mind on the burden of proof as soon as I said something. I don't think I have that kind of power, but I need to put it together in a way that's going to be thought-provoking so that when the call's over, you can be like, yeah, why am I thinking about the burden of proof still in this way that I know is kind of wrong? What is keeping me there? And it's because, and I don't know what they are specifically for you, but most religions have built-in protection mechanisms. You got indoctrinated into a package of beliefs which are comforting, which are shared by the people around you, which people around you probably would look at you like you had three heads if you ever said, nah, I don't believe that God stuff, because it's just so matter of fact to them. And you were, it's like, here I'm referencing commercials you're not going to know either. So this one's for Brian. You're soaking in it. And so you've got it's Palmolive, and that's what we're going to old commercials, but you are so surrounded by it that you don't recognize how much it's impacted you. And I'm just giving you food for thought for later.
I appreciate it a ton, man. I really do.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
So when I lost my faith, it was devastating for me, and I went on a 2-year journey trying to get it back. I read everything. I read Aquinas. I read Hans Kuhn. I read all the big names at the time. And the thing that I came down to ultimately is what can I know? What can I know? I don't want to have to believe. What can I know? And when you look at the God proposition, there's simply no knowledge to be found there anywhere. You can't know anything. And because of the supernatural realm, this is why I call myself an apatheist. I don't care if God exists, even if he does. When you get into the supernatural realm where all things are possible, you have no way to literally know anything because nothing is falsifiable if all things are possible, right? So the question of you're talking about a cause, which even if you have a cause, so what? What can you know about that cause? Can you know it is the timeless, spaceless mind that's always existed outside time? And then you have questions about it. If you're existing outside of time, how do you cause anything? There's no time. There's no motion. There's just so much to think about in terms of our knowledge about him. Even if he came down and he told us, I want this. Do you know that he really wants that? No, we have examples in the Bible where God tells someone, I want you to do something, and he doesn't really want them to do that. It could be a test. The whole proposition is just so knowledge free that for me, it just makes I just can't care. I just cannot care. If you give me something to go on, I'll go. I'm along for the ride. But you got to give me something more than something no one knows anything about. Literally no one knows anything about any of this.
Okay. Yeah. And I think I'm gonna get off soon. In a couple of minutes. I would like to also add to the question. Would either of you say that that there's enough proof that together it makes enough of a case to believe in something, but on its own, individual proofs, it's not enough? Like, for example, if they're like the cosmological argument, archaeological evidence, if so much of this were brought to your attention, you were convinced of enough of these quote unquote proofs, would either of you accept in a belief like religion?
I'll accept.
I personally, I don't believe that arguments are evidence. So I need something. I mean, they can be, but they're not compelling in any way to me in terms of something ontologically existing. I want actual evidence of the ontology and its effects in the world, and something demonstrable. I just made a whole series of videos called "The Cumulative Case Against Christianity." Would you be interested in seeing that? Because you can make the opposite point. There's a cumulative case against as well, which I find far more compelling.
I was literally getting
Go
ready
ahead, Matt.
to do my 45-second cumulative case against Christianity. I can't prove that there's no God anywhere ever in the history of history. But for things like Christianity that are tied to concepts like the soul, I think the soul is the most obviously dead concept in all of theology. Every characteristic that has been attributed to a soul that we can actually identify as real is a functional, identifiable, malleable part of what our brains do. My personality, my likes, my preferences, my memories, all of those things, which can all be reset and manipulated, those are things that we would attribute to a soul. When you take all of the facets out of the concept of a soul that are functions of a brain, that are clear functions of a brain in a physical way, where physically manipulating a brain changes those things, what's left? And the notion of it existing outside of the body is all that's left, for which we have no evidence. So that's number one. Number two is the argument from divine hiddenness, that the world does not look as we would expect it to look if any God that actually cared about us or interacted with us existed at all. And tied to divine hiddenness is the argument from inconsistent revelation, the fact that all of these people who have become convinced for some portion of the air quotes evidence that you're pointing to as like, oh, there's all these things, the Kalam cosmological argument, moral arguments, teleological arguments, anthropic principle, all these things, it just gets together and it makes a cumulative case for there being something. Even if that were the case, amongst those who believe for those reasons, there are countless people who believe that they have revelations from God, and those revelations are incompatible. They cannot all be true, but they could all be false. You take inconsistent revelation, divine hiddenness, and the absurdity of a soul, and that kills off the God of classical theism almost. Any God that has a spiritual relationship or connection with human beings, that God can't exist because there is no spirit.
It's all interesting to think about.
Amen. Anyway, I got to move on now. Kramnik, I appreciate the call, though. So think about that and give us a call back some other time.
Wait, real quick. Do you think that you could tell me one atheist that's good to listen to, and then one theist that you respect a lot?
Matt Dillahunty.
Oh, well,
of course, let's not that's do obvious.
That. I can. I generally prefer not to, because there's different people that I think the people don't matter. So like I could say here, Mike Jones, otherwise known as Inspiring Philosophy, is a theist that I generally respect, but he's monumentally wrong on some things.
He said theist?
Seems to be. What's that?
He said theist? I thought he said atheist.
Both.
He did one of each is what
I'm saying. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't get that.
He'd be up there. I did a number of debates with Blake Junta. I think Blake is, generally speaking, a reasonable guy, but he's monumentally wrong on LGBTQ issues. So it's like, I can't package up. I could, once upon a time, I would have said, you could listen to Richard Dawkins, except that Richard's bad on trans issues, but he's good on science, but he's not good at all on some philosophical stuff. I could point to Sam Harris and others, include the people that I've worked with, people I haven't worked with. Instead of pointing you to people, I'd rather point you towards ideas and collection of ideas. And so maybe finding anthology type works of here's some of the best videos or best thoughts from a variety of atheist thinkers and philosophers. If we're just going to go with, an atheist in general, then honestly, I'd recommend that you read Innumeracy and Irreligion from John Allen Paulos, who's not generally viewed as, like an atheist activist or anything else, because those two books kind of together are good. Yeah, somebody in chat mentioned Hemant Mehta. I mean, Hemat's a journalist, so I'm going to trust him till he ruins my career. To whatever
Hemat's
extent
great.
I actually have a career. There's plenty of people I could point to, but there's going to be a caveat in all of them.
Can I tell you my view on this? When I was 13 and 14, I was in a band with some older kids because I was really good when I was young. And one of them had a job at the local theater. And so we got to go in and see movies anytime we wanted, as many times as we wanted, and all of that stuff. And the movie that year that was playing that summer was called Life of Brian by Monty Python. And there is a line in that movie. I was religious at the time, but there is a line in that movie that has become the motto of my life. You don't need to follow anyone. Think for yourself. Reason it out on your own. Learn how to think and go from there. Don't worry about other people and what they say, because they'll always let you down. They'll always be douchebags on something. I certainly am. I'm an idiot on many things, and so
I would say the atheists that have disappointed me not at all, or the least, that are somewhat prominent. Dan Barker, probably up there. Dan just sent me something to review. Yeah, I got in trouble for this, but I genuinely don't. It's not like there's a person that I listen to. I'm just kind of even annoyed by the concept of, oh, here's the guy you need to listen to. And it's almost always a guy. Matter of fact, everybody we've listed has been a guy. Go
We're
listen
just
to
all
Julia
people
Sweeney.
anyway. Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah.
And Andrian, Julia Sweeney. There you go.
Yes.
And then when it comes to theology, honestly, it's undeniable that Bill Craig is probably one of the better thinkers in Christianity. Alvin Plantinga as well. Yeah, that's a different category than. Anyway, I hope that was enough of an answer. I've got to put so many caveats on everything.
No, it was great. I appreciate you guys a lot.
All right. Well, thanks you for calling. That was awesome.
For sure. I hope to talk to you guys again some other day. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Call us back. All right. Let me rattle through some announcements before we get on to some of the calls here. And that is that today, after the show is over, there's not going to be an episode of the Sometimes Show, which was going to take place like at 5. Instead, at 6 p.m. Central, I'm going to be doing a Zoom call AMA with patrons. If you're already a patron, you'll get the link. If you're not, you can go to patreon.com/calltheline, and you can come in, and I'll be there. I don't know if we set a strict time limit on this, but I can guarantee you I'll sit in there and ask if there's people who are there and have questions. I'll be there for at least an hour. But that's the bulk of what's happening this evening. And our best to Jimmy Snow. Get to feeling better, buddy. I miss you. And we get to hang out. But there's another reason for you to join our Patreon and become a patron of The Line. The Line is a network focused on call-in programming with massive audiences. Massive, like there's billions upon billions of cells of people who are watching the programs. Skeptalk on Mondays, Dying Out Loud on Tuesdays, Hang Up on Wednesdays, Transatlantic Call-In Show on Thursdays, and then the Sunday Show on Sundays. But we are also selling products. There's now linemerch.com, and anybody can go there today and buy the first 2 products that are up there, the wine tumbler and glass. You can use the discount code WARONXMAS, WARONXMAS, for 10% off at checkout. And if you're a patron, you can get a patron code for 25% off everything there. You can get it shipped in time for Xmas, for Saturnalia, for, I can't promise that the shipping's actually going to occur. I just wanted to go through all the potential holidays that people might not give a shit about. Because when the 25th rolls around and I'm not doing anything, people are like, oh, what's that? I like Christmas. My ex-wife was crazy for Christmas and still is. I'm glad we're still friends. We still get along. I hope she has an amazing Christmas. I'm glad I don't have to do the decoration this year, because while I like Christmas, I'm okay without Christmas too. Oh, you're muted. Nope, you're still muted. Anyway, while we're figuring that out, we have some people that have been on hold for a little while, and I want to make sure we get to them. Chuck in Kentucky is an atheist, pronouns he, him. Chuck has a question or comment about community outside of religion. So while Arden and Brian are working on getting audio fixed, Chuck, how are you? Thanks for waiting.
Doing well, Matt. How can you hear me? Am I coming through clear?
Yep.
Can you okay. I do have just one tribute for Mr. Deity. Greetings to him. He may not be able to talk, but a little bit of a reminder, if he can still hear, there's a jingle. Life's a sack of shit when you look at it, unless you can turn around and face it with a smile. I don't know if you'd recognize that, but that's one of the
partially
criminals
from Life of Brian
singing.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
yep, I hear you now.
Oh, now I'm hearing an
Hi,
echo
Mr.
in my
Deity.
own. Hi, how are you? It's Alexa's now
Dandy.
talking. The line is, life's a piece of shit when you look at it. Life's a laugh and death's a joke. It's true. Just remember as you go, keep him laughing as you go, or something like that. But remember that the last laugh is on you. That's my favorite part of that line.
Yep.
It's a great song.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, Chuck, what do you got for us?
I wanted to talk coming out. Matt, you and I have too much in common to where we could laugh over. I did enlist in the Navy. I watched my petty officers really dig into a recruit who made the mistake of admitting that he came from a military family. They dropped him onto the floor and said, oh yeah, we just have these average military jobs, and we have a military sense of humor, and would you like to hear military? And digging just kept on going. So there's an issue with faith where, kind of like your neighbor was going on, if you leave your faith community, you might feel a sense of loss or trauma. I come from a Pentecostal background, and more or less, when I started dating internationals, single mothers, illegals, it broadened my perspective enough to where I was okay being agnostic. So I had a pretty long, cold feet period from about 2016 until recently. So I would really like to just mention some things that I think would help people in finding out what it is to be confident in these things that you think you know. I had to end up telling my father because we would argue a lot. I said that witnessing your actions is proof for me that there's no God. And it's funny because I actually thought he didn't hear me when I really jabbed that into him, but he did. And it took over a year before he replied and presented it back to me as a problem. I just don't think that our American education really teaches people what hubris is. Do you have anything to say about that? I've kind of been rambling.
Well, your audio's kind of chopped up a little bit. I'm trying to, when I do the show, let's face facts. I'm in debate mode most of my life,
Yep.
and I'm definitely in debate mode when I'm on the show. And so while it's not the point that you wanted to make, my first question is, and I'm sorry, how would any action your father ever took be evidence that there isn't a God? Because the God concepts are ultimately unfalsifiable.
That's a good one. So I've been encouraged to believe that God is grace. He's a salvation concept. You call on him, you believe in him, and there is every source of inspiration for humankind that you can imagine. The God of the gap and so on. I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
I hear you.
But the amount of apathy and sarcasm in Christianity is just too much for me. It's too much for me to imagine that there could possibly be a God who would endorse mission trips where you go into a third world country and tell people that they aren't believing the right thing. Number one, accept Jesus. Number two,
why?
Their life will get all better. Number three. And then fourthly, you leave them and you recreate the whole Pauline epistle concept, where from a distance you just wave at your neighbor across the road and say, I don't care, but hi. For that to be all there is to the Christian life, that's not the same thing as CPR. I mean, it's not. That's not life-saving. That's not artistic.
So,
that's
Chuck,
not culturing. And
so, Chuck, I understand where you're coming from. You were raised with particular notions about God, and you find aspects of Christianity disappointing to the point where clearly that version of God doesn't exist for you. You weren't making a statement about all of them or any God ever. But there's definitely a possible loss of community that happens when people find their way out of religion. And it can be difficult. It's one of the reasons why we keep pointing people to recoveringfromreligion.org. Some places I haven't mentioned today, but definitely should, as a resource, both that and the Secular Therapy Project, to get people connected to others and perhaps to counselors when they're in a position where they have lost their community. It was, not everybody needs the same type of community in the same way, but we're predominantly social creatures, and that's what religions prey upon, Prey. And so finding that you've been a part of a religious community and then now you're disillusioned and disenfranchised from it That is an opportune time to reach out to something like psychotherapy or psychotherapy or secular or recovering from religion.org, as well as finding organizations like American Atheists and local communities and Oasis and Sunday Assembly and all of those places that have a variety of different community. There are people who don't need it. Like I have enough community that I don't need to go to Sunday Oasis or Sunday Assembly services or any of that stuff. I got other stuff going on, but I'm happy to go there to interact and engage with the people who really benefit from those sorts of things. So that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to go talks at those. But I appreciate you calling in to talk about it, Chuck, but I got to move on to some other calls.
It's nice hearing from you, Matt. Keep it up.
Thanks. Take care. All right. We have theist and atheist callers on the line, and theist callers are always going to have priority. So Jamie is a theist from Arizona, pronouns are she, her, and it says here that you want to let people know there's something more. What can you tell us about the something more and how we can be confident that there is something?
Hey, Matt. How are you?
I'm all right.
You know what, Matt? My son actually found you, and I've been listening to you as well as him for months. We realized that the Bible. Can you hear me, Matt?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay. So we realized that the Bible, we were, I don't even want to go into what we were because that's scary, but we were going around the world trying to find, the answers. And so now we're here, and we have learned that from reading the Bible, that if that's the God of the world, then I don't want to be a part of it, right? Because that's not the God that I would want to follow. But there's some things that have happened to me in my life. I'm 64 years old. There's some things that have happened to me in my life that I cannot explain, and I struggle to just be an atheist and to think that this is it. Okay. When I was a child, I have asthma. I was born with it. I've had it since the age of 2. And when I was 8 years old, I would pass away every night from asthma because they did not have any medications. And I would go to the ceiling above my room and see me and my sister in our double bed. I did not see a light. I didn't see anything special.
Jamie, did you say you would pass? Yeah. Did you say you would pass away every night?
Yes. Yes.
So you think you died every night?
Well, not every, I'm not, please, forgive me. It might not have been every night, but it was many times.
So you think there are many nights where you think there are many nights where when you went to bed, you died?
Well, I can only explain it like this, Matt. So help me, because you're the expert.
I'm not an expert on anything, but I'm stunned to hear somebody say they used to go to bed and die frequently.
Okay, so I would have an asthma attack, lose my breath, and I would be above my bed, seeing me and my sister in the bed. Okay. And I knew that my ride back to my body was going to be a roller coaster, a roller coaster ride. And I was afraid of it. And I would be up there. I always wondered in the years above, why didn't I see a light? Why didn't I see anything? Did anybody care about me? Was I not important? But anyway, I would have to take this roller coaster ride back into my body, and it was traumatic as a child. And my father had to give me mouth to mouth on the bathroom floor. I literally died and was flown to like an Air Force base for help. But what I'm trying to say is that it was real. I literally left my body, and I looked down upon my sister in the bed, and I wondered, and I knew, well, I'm going to have to go back to this trip. I'm going to have to go down this roller coaster ride. And it's going
How
to
do you know
be
you
a
literally
wild
left your
ride.
body?
Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry. I can't hear if you're saying anything.
Yeah. How do you know that you literally left your body rather than you just had a lucid dream or hallucination that felt like you were leaving your body? How do you tell the difference between those two things?
Well, Matt, I'm going to say, of course, this show is going to go on for thousands of years because nobody can prove it. So, I mean, I'm just going to say,
But Jamie,
Jamie. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I say you're the one who's claiming that you literally left your body, and when I ask how you know that happened, it seems to me that what you just said is you don't know and nobody will ever know.
Oh, no.
So you don't have to justify it.
No, Matt, I know for a fact.
How do you know? That's what I asked. How do you know that you literally left your body?
Because I was above the ceiling. I never left the ceiling, and I could see down.
No.
And me and my.
How do you know that you literally left your body? The fact that you perceived yourself as above your body doesn't mean that you were above your body. So how do you know that you literally left your body?
Okay. So again, your show, Matt's going to go on for thousands of years because nobody can prove it to anybody because it's a personal experience.
Jamie, are you going to answer my question or are you going to dodge again?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to dodge you, Matt.
How do you know that you literally left your body?
Because I knew well, not my body, my soul, if you want to call it that. I don't even know, Matt, if that's the term. Okay. I was up on the ceiling and I could see me and my sister in the bed.
Okay. I'm going to ask this for the fourth time now. How do you tell the difference between your brain falsely perceiving that you are floating above your beds and your soul actually being above your beds? How do you tell the difference between those two?
Great question, Matt. And I've always wondered.
It's been a great question every fucking time I asked it.
Okay. Matt, you don't have to curse at me. I'm trying to be.
I can curse as much as I fucking want on my own fucking show. It's not cursing at you. I use colorful language because not only does it make people laugh, but sometimes it breaks the tension. And then it gives you something to deflect to so that you don't have to acknowledge that you're spouting things without evidence. And then you can pretend that I said a bad word and that was the reason the call didn't end well. How do you tell the difference?
You know what, Matt? I respect you so highly.
And yet that's also irrelevant. How do you tell the difference between actually leaving your body and just thinking you left your body?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I don't know.
I don't either, but you're the one claiming you did, and you're claiming literally. And so what only reason I'm making that point is I don't know how to tell the difference. And if you don't know how to tell the difference, then what you should do is stop saying that you literally left your body and say, I felt as if I left my body, because that's closer to accurate.
Okay. So with that, Matt, I'm going to give you that when I was 8 or 9 years old, so that had happened. But when 3 years ago, Matt, when my husband left my bed, Matt, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I became very ingrained in the Bible. I mean, I grabbed the Bible, I ran to it, I started reading Genesis, I thought the earth was flat, all these things. So please do not, think that I'm crazy. But anyway, so my husband passed now.
Sorry. Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's fine. I'm very sorry for your loss. I realize that is a loss that I can't imagine. So Take your time.
Can imagine. And so what I tell everybody is grab your spouse's hand today, because you never know when it's going to happen. But anyway, I'm sorry. So in 4 years, my husband left bed because he got up at like 2 a.m. Okay. He left the bed, and all of a sudden, there was this entity beside me in the bed. Just the head. I'm giving you this. This is crazy. I know it's crazy because I'm even thinking it's crazy. But this entity, blonde hair, highlighted, blue eyes, beautiful blue eyes. I mean, just stunning. And he said, "All you want to do is talk." And there was this. This can be crazy. I mean, you're going to think this is crazy, but this is the truth. That I felt this universe in front of me pushing me towards my headboard at powerful speed. And I kept looking over to the right, and there was this guy, this entity that his eyes went from light blue to red, and he said, "You are, you just want to talk." Well, yeah, I did. But anyway, then I said, "I love you." And I meant it with all my heart. And I had to say it again. "I love you." And when I said it the second time, everything vanished. The vortex in front of me, he vanished. I got up out of my bed. I was in some kind of an adrenaline rush. I ran to my husband, who was in the living room, and I said, "Let me tell you what happened." So what I'm saying is, my husband's passed on Thanksgiving Day of 2022, which was the hardest thing in my life. But there was something that happened that day to show me that there's something more than just this. We are not just here just to, live this life and then we die and when we're gone. I believe that there's something more. There has to be something more.
No, there doesn't. Look.
Well, okay, that's your opinion.
Hang on, Jamie.
Hang on. Opinion, Matt.
Hang on.
But there is something more than this.
Jamie.
And I don't know what it is, Matt. I don't know what it is.
Jamie.
I don't know if it's a source, or if it's a creator.
Jamie,
I don't know.
You don't know. You don't know, and you're calling in to assert this. Now, I'm incredibly sorry for your loss. I can't fully imagine that. But what you've described is, from my standpoint, very similar to lucid dreaming, to things like sleep paralysis.
Matt.
Okay. Never mind then, Jamie. Never mind. I no longer give a shit. I'm trying to explain to you. No, Jamie, you're done talking. I'm trying to explain to you from the outside how people could make reasonable inferences about what happened, and how I don't think that you're crazy, and how I think that in your grief and everything else, that it's more reasonable than not to think that your own psyche manifested things that you can't demonstrate and can't prove and found comfort in, and all of that is fine. But if my mere suggestion that this is lucid dreaming is met with you interrupting to deny that this is the case, while you're going on and on about how people need to know that this isn't all there is and there just has to be more, you are wrong. There does not have to be more. The evidence does not support the concept that there is more. What supports the concept that there's not more is the fact that this happens when you're sleeping and not at noon.
Matt,
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry, okay. But you called me, and I'm telling you what I think.
And
then you're just going to be, no, that's not the case. All right, I'm going to give you one opportunity. I'm going to give you one opportunity, Jamie. How do you prove it's not a lucid dream? You're so convinced it's not a lucid dream that you cut me off to say it wasn't. How do you prove it?
Matt,
How do you prove it, Jamie?
Matt, respectfully.
Jamie, how do you prove it?
There is no proof.
And so where does your confidence come from if you're not able to prove it?
Because what I'm trying to tell these people online is that there's something more. And
No,
you
there's
want
not.
to discuss what happened to me.
No, Jamie.
You want to attack me. I'm not trying to be attacked.
Jamie, I don't. Okay, I'm going to mute you. I don't want to attack you. I suggested what might be happening, and you are so defensive and so wrapped up in this that you think that I'm attacking you, and you are desperate to tell all these people that there has to be something more. And the truth is, there doesn't have to be something more. The time to believe that there's something more is when you can actually present evidence for there being something more. That's when we're warranted. I know you're overwhelmed right now. And so you're lashing out at me as if I want to make you look bad. I want to shut you down. No, if there was an afterlife, I would love to know. It would be very cool and very interesting to know. It would make things completely different about how we interact and how we deal with death. But you don't have evidence for that. You've admitted that you have no way to tell the difference. And despite admitting that you have no way to tell the difference, you are cocksure that there is something more. And all I did was ask you, how can you demonstrate the difference between these things? How do you know there's something more? You're calling in because you want everybody to know there's something more, but there isn't. There is no good reason to think that there's something more. And that's important because now your loss, which is going to impact your life, and it's important. If somebody's trying to make you think that you should forget or not pay attention or not relish those years, those people are ghouls. You should love and cherish your relationship and those memories and all of that. And they were going to, unfortunately, the memories are going to have to be enough, because this notion that there is more is one that isn't supported by evidence. I'm not trying to attack you or anything else. I wanted you called in to say you want to tell people there's something more, and I'm asking for the evidence. And when you acknowledge that you don't have evidence for it, then you have to acknowledge that when you say there's something more, there's no way to tell the difference between that being wishful thinking on your part and it being real. I'm not here to attack you, Jamie.
Matt, may I speak to you? May I speak
I've
to you,
unmuted
Matt?
you. Go ahead.
Okay, Matt. Thank you. I did not know I was muted. Wow. I've been talking for about a mile, so I apologize.
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, that's why I muted you.
Okay. So, Matt, you and I are critical thinkers. Matt, may I speak?
No, I am.
Okay. May I speak? Please. You are a critical thinker.
As long as you stay on track.
May I speak to you, please? And who is the gentleman that's beside you?
Brian.
May I ask who the gentleman is beside you?
Brian.
That's Brian.
I play a character named Mr. Deity, and that's how I'm titled here.
My apologies. May I just speak and say, Matt, you don't know how respectful that I am of you. I mean, wow. You've taught me a ton. But Matt, for you to say that I did not experience these things.
Okay.
You are.
Jamie, I'm muting you. Listen to me. I did not say you did not experience those things. I never said that. This is a fiction that your fucking head invented because now you feel like you're attacked. I did not attack you, and I did not say you did not experience those things. What I asked was how you tell the difference between what you perceived about an experience and what the actual experience was. At no point did I deny your experience. At no point did I say this stuff didn't happen. At no point is that true. Let's try this again.
So Matt, so thank you for saying that. Matt, do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear? Okay, Matt,
Yes.
do you hear me, Matt?
I
Do you
hear
hear me?
you.
Matt, do you hear what I'm saying?
I'm going to hang up if you ask me one more time.
Okay, I'm no, Matt, it's not you, it's this phone. I apologize. Please forgive me.
You're forgiven.
Because you're very gracious, and I applaud you for being gracious. But there is something more.
We understand that you believe that based on your experience, but that doesn't transfer to us without something more.
And is this
because people experience things that are just not true.
May I ask
I'm sorry?
who is speaking?
This is Brian.
Okay, Brian, thank you. No, I'm not I mean, of course, Matt, you cannot get into my body and go through the experiences that I've gone through. I get that. I'm not expecting you.
You have an anecdote, and anecdotal information is just not sufficient for other people to believe it. And when you say you know that there is more, that's just not an intellectually honest statement. What you believe, based on the experience that you've had, that there is something more. That doesn't mean that there's something more. As much as I would like there to be more too.
Right. So, Brian, may I say
yes.
that I am studying, per Matt. I'm studying every single religion, and my son is, so he gives me all of that information. We know that that religion is false. Okay, we understand that the God of the Bible is, if that's the God of the Bible, then I don't want to be a part of it. We understand that.
Which is
what
irrelevant.
I'm saying is,
Jamie, what kind of God you want to be true is irrelevant to what God actually is true. The God of the Bible could be true, could be a prick. You may not want to worship him, but he's still real. You fancy yourself a critical thinker, and yet at every opportunity when critical thinking would lead you away from a conclusion, so far in this conversation, you've been led to the conclusion. Critical thinking suggests not that a God doesn't exist because you don't like him or don't find him good. That's not true. Critical thinking does not lead you to the conclusion that there is, in fact, something beyond this world when the evidence doesn't support it. That's not the way critical thinking works.
Okay, and I understand, Matt. Matt, I respect you so highly. And I'm just saying that I personally think that there's something more because of what I've experienced. Now, can I prove that to all of you? Absolutely not. Will this show go on for 1,000 years because nobody can prove it to you? Absolutely. And so we are sitting here. Your show, Matt, will be on the line for fucking 20 fucking years at least. Why? Because you and your people that are on this show have not experienced what I have experienced or what others have experienced. We can't show you that.
You're wrong.
And I get it, Matt. Matt, I get it. I get it that you do not know what I've experienced. But Matt, I'm just asking you to please have an open mind that there is something else.
Oh my fucking God, Jamie. Could you be any more absolutely disrespectful? First, you accused me of saying that you're...
I'm not disrespectful. I am,
you
what,
are.
The integrity
you
and
are.
the character.
I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to explain why. You say I've taught you so much, and we're critical thinkers. You then accused me of saying your experiences didn't happen. That's not at all what I said. And now you're implying that I don't have an open mind when I've said and repeatedly pointed out that I am open to believing anything for which there is evidence. All I did was ask you how you can tell the difference between what you perceived happened and what actually happened, because those two things may be the same or they may be different. But the way to tell the difference is that to provide an evidence-based argument for it. Each time we get there, you acknowledge that this is the case, and then you immediately switch back to, but it happened. And your show will go on for 20 years because nobody will ever be able to prove this. First of all, you don't know what nobody will ever be able to prove. You don't know what we could potentially prove tomorrow about whether or not there's a soul, whether or not there's an afterlife, whether or not there's experiences like that. You don't know what somebody might prove. But then you go in and you say, but you need to keep an open mind. My mind is open. How dare you suggest and imply that it's not? That's what's disrespectful. I'm sitting here providing you an opportunity to tell us what you believe, why you think other people should believe it. And on several occasions now, you've accused me of doing something that I don't and implied that I don't have an open mind. It's not my fault that your claims do not have sufficient evidence for other people to believe them. My mind is open and it will remain open. But are you suggesting that people should just believe stuff when they don't have any evidence for it? You're unmuted.
Matt, may I speak?
I'm so sick of my name, Jamie. I'm so sick of my name right now.
Matt.
You're unmuted. Say what you want to say.
Okay, so the most important person in the world, can I speak to you? If that helps. Matt, I think the world of you. Matt, may I speak to you? Matt, may I speak to you?
You are speaking to me.
Okay, good. Matt, I think so highly of you. You don't even realize.
I don't
my
care.
son have what you
I don't care.
emphatically. Okay, you don't care. And that's okay. But I want you to know that, Matt, I'm not somebody that's trying to, I'm bringing to you what I've experienced, and I'm trying to bring to you what I know. That's a dilemma that I have, because I'm an atheist, really. I attune to you all more than anybody else, but there's some things that I've experienced that I struggle with trying to get beyond. That's all I'm saying.
And if you had called in and said, if you call in and you say, hey, I had some experiences that I can't explain, my answer would have been, yeah, I know lots of people have had experiences they can't explain. I've had experiences I can't explain. I had experiences in and around church stuff that I can't explain. And so now, after going down this road where you have over the last half hour repeatedly asserted there is something more, I need to let people know there's something more. I have to let people know there's something more. There's definitely something more. Instead, now we're down to, hey, I had experiences that I can't explain. And that's fine. When you can explain them, that's the time when you'll have a belief that's warranted. And that's all any of us have said from the beginning. Nobody denied your experiences. Nobody said you were wrong. You're the only one that suggested you sounded crazy. I think that you don't sound crazy at all. I think you sound like someone who's dealing with grief, someone who is experiencing other things that have been described as lucid dreaming and sleep paralysis and things like that, because the brain is weird. The brain is weird and does weird things.
Not sleep paralysis. As an 8-year-old child, this happened to me.
Goodbye, Jamie.
And
Goodbye, Jamie.
I did not tell anybody because
Jamie?
I did not know.
Goodbye.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
Goodbye. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
My sister was very close with my brother, who was 8 years older than her. She was 12 years older than me. And my brother died when I was 5 months old. And I was told growing up that he appeared to her shortly after he died. And the reason this was so believable was because he was wearing his temple clothes, which is what he was buried in. And she didn't know that. And she'd never seen temple clothes. So this was very powerful evidence. Of course, Later, I learned that when my dad joined the church when my sister was 8, they were all sealed together. Mormons do this sealing thing. They believe families are forever, and my mom and dad then were sealed in the temple, which is a special kind of marriage that Mormons do above and beyond. And of
Yeah.
course, my sister was sealed to them at 8 years old. So she was in a temple. She saw the temple closed. She knew what that was about. People have hallucinations, post-grief, post-bereavement hallucinations are fairly common. I think 18% or something like that of the population. You probably know the percentage better than I do, Matt. But things like this happen to people all the time. And the question is the experience representative of something that's real, or is it something we're doing in our brains? When I was Mormon, and I was really into it one year, I had fasted all day, and then I'd gone to our general conference where the leaders speak, and I was so in it. And that night I prayed and I had a vision which showed me things that were going to happen to me, which of course didn't happen to me because I left. Told me that the girl that I was with at the time was going to be my one and only, and of course we split up a year later. So that's the question. Yeah, you've had an experience. And I think if you're a genuine critical thinker, what you don't do is presume that your experience it's representative of something actual and true. The critical thinker, you say, well, I know how the brain works, I know what I want, particularly in a situation where you've recently lost a loved one.
It's, I haven't been in that position of losing a partner. And we're not in a position here, neither you nor me nor even Shannon, who's wonderful and deep into psychology. I'm not trying to diagnose Jamie. I'm not saying that what she experienced was sleep paralysis, was lucid dreaming. I'm saying it sounds like the way people have described some of those things. It also sounds like what happens when people are grieving. I remember hearing a story from a relative of mine about how shortly after their grandmother died, they were wakened in the middle of the night with their grandma sitting on their bed. And when they woke up in the morning, there was a butt-shaped print on the bed. And when I heard that, I was a believer at the time. And it was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And you just take it at face value and it's just true. And over the years, I've looked back on that same story. Now, I can't prove what did or didn't happen, but it's entirely possible that this child was tossing and turning and having a fit, and somebody else came in and sat down. It's also entirely possible that this was all a dream and the butt-shaped imprint was a coincidence of, the bedding that got kicked. There's a billion things that could be. And the question for Jamie and everybody else to ask is, why do these things happen when you're in bed? Why aren't they happening in the middle of the day when you're at your most alert? Why don't you pound a Monster energy drink at 10 a.m. and then have this? Now, I can't prove and would never even claim that Jamie's understanding of what happened was wrong. It's not a matter of saying what you're saying is wrong. It's saying you can't show that what you're saying is true. I believe that you've had an experience. When people tell me that they've been abducted by aliens, I'm willing to believe that they've had some experience. I just can't accept their explanation for it without additional evidence. Because if somebody comes up and says, I had this experience, and it turns out it was in fact aliens abducting me, and somebody else comes up and said, oh, I had this experience, and it turns out it was in fact a psychotic break, people are terrified. And I get why, Jamie and others may be terrified of, oh, no, I don't want to think that it's my brain doing stuff and coping with stuff, because that means there's something wrong with me. And there's such a stigma against mental health issues that I don't think people realize. Your brain is fucking with you 24/7. The model of reality that you have in your brain is not real. Nothing about it is real. Your senses absorb information from the world, and your brain creates a model, just as if you were in, Unreal Engine 5. It's doing its best to construct it. And you can't pay attention to everything that's going on. You think that you see everything all the time, but you don't. You have inattentional blindness. You have, the color that you perceive is is largely impacted by the colors that surround it. That's how we get so many optical illusions. The world that lives in your head is a fiction. And the goal of skepticism is to make that world as accurate as possible. And we tell how accurate it is by presuming that Brian and I share a world. So I can be like, hey, did you see that? Did you hear that? Did you experience? And is it the same as this? We get independent confirmation. This is what science is all about. I'm going to tell you what I witnessed in my lab. I'm going to put up exactly what I did, and all of you get to try to do it too. And if we're able to replicate results, then those are the things that we consider not true, but more accurate than the ones we can't replicate. And while it's going to be a rough little bit, because I don't do this show to make somebody cry. But also, if you're going to cry and tell me how much you respect me, and then meanwhile accuse me of saying things I didn't say, I'm just going to recognize you are currently in a really rough spot, and being on a call-in show isn't the right spot for you right now. And so maybe Jamie call in some other time. But for the people who are like, oh my God, Matt was so mean. No. When you call in and you say, here's what I experienced, and I ask you how you tell the difference, and you admit you can't, and then you want to double down, we're right back to the beginning of the show, or second caller. I think it was second caller, where he admitted he has no way. It's impossible for him to make an argument for what he believes, and yet he believes it anyway, and yet he's going to try anyway.
Right.
It is a difficult position. And it's not any easier being on this side of it, because people are expecting, oh, well, if it wasn't God, tell me what it was, Mr. Know-it-all Smarty Pants. Well, I don't know what it was, but I don't have any reason to think it was a God.
Your point about you bringing up science. Yeah, your point about science is so perfect, because the entire scientific method is an admission that our brains don't work well, that you can't just think this stuff through, that reason and rationality take you here. They get you to the hypothesis, but they don't demonstrate the claim. And you literally have to remove yourself from the process and give to other people, just like you've said, here, can you confirm this? Can you do the same experiment and get the same results? And then once we take ourselves out of it, and our awful, stupid brains want things to be a certain way, then you can get reliable, demonstrable, actionable results.
Yeah, and it's really difficult when you're talking about something that, like, I'm hungry. How do you prove that to somebody else? I have no way of proving that I'm hungry. I could even sit here and scarf down a big bowl of food, but that doesn't tell you that I'm actually hungry or that I'm actually experiencing hunger. And so we can put my head in an MRI and we can say, are you hungry? Yes. And we can see which parts of the brain light up. But are those parts of the brain lighting up because I'm actually hungry? Or are those the parts of the brain that light up when I lie about being hungry? Or are those parts, there's someday we may be able to map it all and get it. But right now we don't. So, and if I put an MRI on someone who thinks, let's say that there's two people. One person thinks they've left their body and is floating above it, and another person has left their body and is floating above it. And I have a magnetic resonance imagery on both of their brains. Am I going to see the same brain activity?
Yeah, that's interesting.
What we know from studying some things about brains is that when people are put into, I'm going to say MRI, it may be a different imaging thing, and asked, what do you think about A, B, and C? A certain part of the brain lights up. And when they're asked, what does God think about A, B, and C? The same part of their brain lights up. And when they're asked, what does that person over there think about A, B, and C? A different part of their brain lights up. That's a strong
Right.
indicator that God and the self are a union. Now, my atheist friends, particularly my skeptical, science-minded friends, want to be like, see, clearly God is just them. Clearly God, but you can't say that, because what if the part of the brain that lights up the self is how God interacts with you? So the actual God concept is ultimately untestable, unfalsifiable as is. And so we're stuck. You can't read minds. You can approximate it. We do a really good job of reading minds. I mentioned this in the show as well, because when I do mind reading, I talk about how when I'm walking through when I'm at the mall and I'm walking, I don't have to signal to people, am I veering left? Am I veering right? I just do it. And we're all reading each other's body language, but we're so good at it. You've been in a car, guarantee, if you're a driver, and since you're in California, you might not be that much of a driver, but if you've been in a car for any period of time and there's somebody in front of you and you can't see them at all, their windows are tinted, and you know that motherfucker is about to cut over without signaling, and they do it. How much closer to psychic can you get? You're reading something. Your brain is saying, I've been watching this person for a while, but you haven't. You've just been watching the car. You can't see that person. You can't see with the faces they're making, nothing. You're looking at the car and you're making an assessment of how this car's movement is different from what I would expect someone to do if they were going to be going, getting over in the left lane. And boom, they do it.
Right.
We're psychic, just not in the way that people want to pretend.
That's a great point. I've never heard that before.
Well, you should come to the show next time I do it. I'll get you a free ticket and everything. All right. We have somebody who's been on hold for like an hour and 40 minutes, and I just can't in good conscience keep them on hold any longer. So, and I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Anirban?
Anirban.
Anirban? Welcome.
Yeah.
Well, you're on with Brian and Matt. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
A little sad, actually, after the last call, but I'm hoping you'll pick us up with comments on a subject that everybody loves.
As a child, I
Anirban, I have to stop. I apologize. Now I'm even more sad because you've been on hold for an hour and 40 minutes. The audio from your phone is completely unusable. It is absolutely garbled. I'm going to return you to the queue and see if a call screener can get the gist of your question. But I won't be able to put you on the air like that. I'm very sorry, especially since you've been on there waiting for a long time. Jack in Maryland, theist, pronouns are he, him, once talked about burden of proof. So welcome, Jack. You're on with Brian and Matt.
Hey, nice to meet you, Brian.
Good to meet you.
It's funny. A lot of what I was trying to say, or what I called in to say, kind of just got answered with the monologue you gave there about why you prefer scientific evidence. If you don't mind, I have a different question about theism.
Go with whatever you
want. Okay, just because.
Ask whatever you want.
Okay. The question I had was, I was curious if you could answer for me. How are you so sure that a God who created the universe necessarily could prove his existence to you?
Oh,
Yeah, that's
so
been on my mind. Just looking at your videos.
I don't. So there's a couple of possibilities. One is that there's a God who created the universe and then ceases to exist, which means that it existed long enough to create the universe, but doesn't actually do anything else at all. But if a God that created the universe still exists and can interact with the universe in some detectable way, which is the only God worth talking about, because if God can't interact with the universe in any detectable way, then all the religions are wrong and nobody's ever got a revelation or anything else. The God of classical theism and the God of most versions of the God of Abraham is described at having that power. So yeah, I presume that anything worth calling a God would absolutely be able to provide, could actually force me to believe. If you can create a universe, and you have choices in how that universe is made, and you know what's going to happen in the future, then a God could do that. You could be right. If somebody says, hey, there's a God, but he can't provide you evidence that he exists, okay, then nobody's belief in that God is warranted. Unless you're saying that he just can't show it to me.
Well, just judging by stuff I've heard in other shows and stuff, Matt, it seems like, you often when people talk about, different things they see or things that were supposedly in the Bible, like, it kind of comes back to obviously the possibility, which does genuinely exist, for hallucinations and that sort of thing. And obviously, if you see pillar of fire down from the sky, you could say, well, that could be an alien spaceship. It could be a number of things. But it just seems like if there's never anything physical that couldn't have a better non-God explanation, I'm not sure how a God could, at least if I'm understanding the standards of evidence correctly, show himself to you.
I don't say that. So my answer, when people say what would change their mind, my answer is I don't know. But if a God exists, that God knows what would change my mind, because we tend to define God as someone who should be wise enough and intelligent enough to know from the standpoint of sound epistemology what would actually change my mind. That God should also know me well enough as the however powerful it is, and that God should be capable of providing that evidence. Now, if you want to posit a God that is incapable of demonstrating the truth of its existence to anybody, well, that's fine. But all that does is mean that I'm in a position where every religious person now has no warrant for their belief, which means I'm still right.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. This kind of comes back to the thing I actually was planning to talk about in the call, which is the burden of proof. I understand that theism is a claim, that's obviously saying, there is a God, and so it has a burden of proof because it's a claim. But oftentimes I hear, in response to things that theists bring up as possible evidence for God, testimonials, supposed miracles of Lord, stuff like that, that's not good evidence, or that's not sufficient evidence for a God. And I guess I was trying to get at was, isn't the claim that's not good evidence a claim that needs demonstration itself?
Yeah, that's what I've spent 20 years doing. By pointing out,
and this is kind of why I said, you kind of addressed it at the beginning for why you prefer scientific evidence. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure I agree completely, but I do understand, I think, coherently why you hold that position. So,
yeah, I think there are good arguments against the existence of various gods. We talked about that briefly earlier when Brian was talking about the video that he's just been working on about the cumulative case against gods or a god. I talked about it with divine hiddenness, inconsistent revelation, and the absurdity of a soul. When you add that to the various God concepts that are completely untestable because they're unfalsifiable, because they're ill-defined. There's a reason that there are theological non-cognitivists, and even though I'm not one of them, they're not entirely wrong in saying that the vast majority of gods that people have proposed are not sufficiently defined to even be able to have a coherent concept of. It's one of the reasons I'm presuming that Brian's an apatheist. But if we're looking at it, Mike, first of all, when I haven't made any claim at all, somebody comes in and says, hey, a God is real. And then my questions then begin with, what do you mean by God? And what demonstration can you make that they're real? And they can present their case. And then I can say, that's not enough to convince me. Or I can say, that shouldn't be enough to convince anybody. Convince anybody. Because we understand, we have a good enough understanding of what makes for sound epistemology. If you come in and say, hey, I believe there's a unicorn in the backyard that is pooping out ice cream. Sorry to pick something just everybody looks at and says ridiculous. But
it is less.
I would be willing to believe that, provided there was actual evidence for it. But if we go out and we find no evidence, we don't find hoof prints, we don't find ice cream, we don't see a unicorn, and then people start making up, well, it was here, it left, the ice cream is melted. If every attempt to find evidence for something fails, that doesn't mean the claim isn't true, but it definitely means that we're not on sound footing to believe that it's real. And so with the God claims, what do we see? Well, just looking at today's calls, you got one where it wasn't about God's existence at all, but getting you to say there was a God. Then you get the Kalam cosmological argument of, hey, there had to be, or a first cause version, there had to be something that started it all off. Why not say it's God? Well, why not say it's a multiverse? Why not say it always existed in some form? Why not say we don't know? Because we don't know is probably the most accurate answer we have. And so in some cases, people will present a case and I can say, that case shouldn't be good enough for anybody to believe this. And there are other cases where I can say, I can't tell you whether or not that should be good enough. Like somebody says, hey, I prayed and the Holy Spirit privately revealed to me that blah, 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 blah. It would be rude of me to say you're nuts. And it would also be something that adopts a burden of proof I can't meet. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a mythicist. I have friends who are mythicists. There are the people on this network who are mythicists. And yet I think that mythicism asserts a claim that it can't defend, which is Jesus did not exist. He is just a fiction. I think there's a really strong case that almost anything and everything we, air quotes, know about Jesus is myth. I think there's a strong case for that, but maybe not enough to say, oh, he never existed. And yet we don't need to go that far, because if Christianity, and I know you haven't said if you're a Christian or anything else, doesn't matter. If Christianity is true, Jesus's existence should be beyond question. Socrates' existence doesn't matter to anybody, because Socrates' words are true or not, irrespective of whether Socrates existed. Jesus had to exist, had to say the things that he said, had to live, be crucified, get killed, and resurrected. All of those things have to be true. If Jesus didn't exist, and there's no way to demonstrate Jesus didn't exist, Christianity's dead from the outset. What kind of God creates a universe and then decides that the way to solve the problem is to come down, take human form, born of a virgin, all these elements of a story that nobody can verify, right down to whether or not he actually walked the earth? there's plenty of good reason to think he might have, in some form or another, that there was a person that this is all tied to. Can't demonstrate any of it. And then you're going to decide people's eternal fates based on whether or not they're able to suspend credulity and believe a story that nobody can prove. That's absurd. That's not a good God. That's not a smart God. That's a God we made up because we were dumb.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the problem of divine hiddenness is something that anyone who's claiming to be a theist has to, contend with. I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't know why, God seems to reveal himself to some people, but not others. But I guess it's just, the thing that comes to me is even if it's true that God, kind of has a sort of Old Testament, view about this stuff and acts in ways that we, wouldn't see as ethical today. I'm not sure that would disprove his existence, and I'm not saying he did either. But do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, but you don't need to disprove his existence. I mean, I don't know how you would do that anyway. But what Matt just talked about is not the divine hiddenness argument. What he just outlined is something I call the divine stupidness argument, is that you've got this one event in 13.8 billion years. He's created the entire universe. Everything that is all about this one event that we all must believe in to be saved. And he loves us. And he can't even give us a single eyewitness to the event. There's an absurdity there that's beyond hiddenness in my book.
Yeah.
I do have, sort of an understanding of how it looks. I mean, but again, it's like if you read, the Old Testament, God does stuff like that all the time. I mean, Book of Job, any of that stuff.
Right. That's why I think that stuff is all pretty stupid too.
When for anybody who believes that the Bible is an accurate telling of story, and who believes that, for example, Jesus was divine, why would Jesus curse a fig tree for not bearing figs out of season? How could a being that created the entirety of the universe, including supposedly how trees work, possibly be irritated with, annoyed at, or curse a tree for not bearing fruit out of season? Even if it was in season, that God would know exactly what was wrong with that tree. There's no fault of the tree. It's like when I get mad at stuff all the time, and I'm never mad for more than a few seconds. But if I'm playing a game, if I'm playing a chess game and I run out of time, I get mad, and it'll be, oh my God, I can't believe, how did I run out of time? Where'd all my fucking time go? Blah, 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 blah. And the truth is, I wasted that time. I'm the one that had the same opportunity as my opponent, which is why I don't stay mad. It's why I don't, I don't feel cheated at this. I get irritated in traffic. I've flipped people off. I've had somebody chase me down for miles because I flipped them off, even though they were in the wrong for doing it. And I was completely in the right, and exercising my free speech by saying, fuck you, buddy. But the fact that we get mad about stuff is what makes us human. It's absurd for the all-knowing creator of the universe to get mad at a tree.
The worst example is the pigs, casting the demons into the pigs, because we've all seen Babe. Those are cute little animals. Why would you cast devils into a bunch of pigs? They're adorable, and they're so sentient.
Chapter.
On that note, Jack,
I understand what
we have run up against a hard wall of time, and I got to let you go. But I appreciate the call. Give us another call back. I'd love to talk to you more about other stuff.
Yep, sounds good. Have a good night, Matt. Bye.
Thanks. All right, because of a number of schedules, we are not going to run past the 5 o'clock hour. So let me do the announcements as quick reminders. First of all, in about an hour and 5 minutes, I'll be live on a Zoom call where if you're if you're a patron of the line, which you can go to patreon.com/calltheline to become a patron, you can come in and ask me questions if you're not tired of listening to me enough for one day. And if you are, you can ask. I'll take the weird questions. I'm here for you guys at that point. So whatever you want to do. As a reminder of the shows that are coming up right here, tomorrow, Skeptalk with Forrest Valkai and Shannon Q. Tuesday, I'll be Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock and Eve Was Frame. Wednesday, I'll be back with a Hang Up, and joining me will be Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Thursday is the Transatlantic Call-In Show with Aron and Katy. So we got OG host this weekend. Next Sunday will be the Sunday Show with me and Shannon Q. My brother's in chat. I love you, buddy. I will talk to you a little bit later today. But this is the first time that Brian and I have gotten to do an episode of the Sunday Show. I think it may be the only time we've done any online call-in show together, despite having met a bazillion-1 years ago and being two of the OG dudes around here. I know why. I know why. It's because you have hair. If you just lose your hair, you could do shows with me all the time.
All right, I'll work on it.
I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure. We'll do this again. I don't know why the hell it took us so long.
This has been so much fun for me. I don't ever get to do this. I don't get to hear these people. You're the person whose content I probably watch the most, and I've been watching forever. And there's so much stuff I can't ever consume all of it. But I love your debates and stuff like that. So I've watched so much of that. I listen to them a lot. So you're probably the one theist that I know probably better than anyone else. Like if someone asked me, what would Matt Dillahunty say about this? I could probably tell.
You could probably get really, really close. Anyway, provided everybody wants to actually see this, we'll definitely get Brian back for some other stuff. And unless you don't want me back, in which case Brian can come back and do Sunday shows with somebody else, because I'm not essential to this. I'm just here on Sunday. In the meantime, huge thank you to our call screener, to all of our moderators, to the lovely and talented Miss Arden Hart down the hall down there who wants to close out this show. If you are going through difficult times, especially if you've lost a loved one, religion is one of the worst infections, I guess, that spread around, trying to manipulate people when they're down. And one of the reasons for it is because we're willing to manipulate ourselves for comfort. It's not just religions that do it. We desperately wish there was something more than this life. And maybe there is, but I haven't seen evidence of it. But if you become convinced that there's something beyond this life and you don't have sufficient evidence for that, and you are in fact wrong, that might lead you to miss the opportunity to do things right the first time, to do things right in the one and only life that we know we're going to get. If you think that you're going to get to see grandma again in some heaven or afterlife, then you might not apologize for what you did or what you said, or you might not listen to her apology for what she did or what she said. It's difficult. It's tough to do a call-in show and figure out who's being real and who's not, and how much kindness do you exercise before you inject some much needed frustration, and how many times should you or could you say fuck? I can say it a lot. I was a sailor. I have massive practice at saying it. In the meantime, cut yourself some slack. Learn to get comfortable saying, I don't know, because you don't. None of us do. Your brain is lying to you. The whole goal is to do what you can to figure out when it's not lying to you, and grab onto every one of those moments you can and start letting go of the ones that you can't really hang on, the ones that are too ephemeral, the ones that don't have good enough evidence. Take care of yourselves. Tune into the other shows, and I'll be back on Wednesday and next Sunday. Take care. Look at all those wonderful patrons. Some of you guys I'll be seeing here in less than an hour as we get ready to start.
Nice.
Patreon.com/call the line. Don't forget about the special 10% War on Xmas discount